Ada for telling my wife she can leave because I'm not kicking my older kids out. I, 43M, have been with to my current wife Amanda, 42F, for the past 6 years and we have 2 daughters, Becca 4F and Eliza 2F, together while I have 2 kids from my previous marriage Liam, 17M, and Sage, 15F. The divorce was less than amicable and since my ex-wife had more money and a better paying job she was awarded primary custody despite me fighting it. For the last 8 years I've had my older kids every other weekend and on Wednesdays. A few weeks ago my older kids asked if they could live with us full-time due to issues with their stepdad. Liam especially had come to blows with him a few times and even their mother thought it would be for the best. I did talk to my wife about it and I know she wasn't happy as she feels uncomfortable around my older kids, although this is something she neglected to tell me until we had our first child together. Things since Liam and Sage moved in have been hard and as much as I'd love to get some family therapy my wife is against it and we're on a waiting list. Before when my kids would come over my wife would take our daughters to her parents a lot to give us space even though I never asked for it. Now don't get me wrong, I'm sure being a step-parent is difficult but my kids are really good kids. They have straight A's, lots of friends, play sports, and are incredibly respectful. I know I'm biased but people go out of their way to tell me these things. So it has been terrible watching Amanda nitpick everything they do. Almost as if she's waiting for them to slip up so she can send them back to their moms. We had already gotten into an argument over the holidays due to her trying to push them out of our traditions. Our older daughter Becca is going through a biting phase. Her school wants her to get OT and I've been working with our insurance since Amanda doesn't like the one at the school but as always it seems like there's an endless waitlist. So obviously the house is tense and we've all been walking on eggshells. Then yesterday morning when I was making us some breakfast we heard a scream and Becca came into the kitchen crying and saying that Sage hit her. Amanda ran into the den where Liam and Sage were and started screaming at them to leave. She was obviously pissed but Sage told her she was sorry, she had been done with the TV so had changed it to one of the girls' shows and Becca got excited and bit her. She said she didn't mean to slap her and felt bad. I immediately calmed down because I think anyone has been there but Amanda didn't believe her. Sage had a bite mark for God's sake. Things continued escalating and our girls were crying and Amanda screamed at both of my older kids to leave. Sage told her she would so she could calm down and that pissed Amanda off more. Liam and Sage left for a friend's and ended up spending the night there. So for the past day Amanda has been on one saying I needed to pack their things and send them back to my ex-wife's permanently. I can't keep dealing with this BS. I told her this morning that it was an accident and she needed to let it go but she's refusing, even threatening to call the police. She said she could never be comfortable with her babies around Sage anymore and that she didn't feel safe. I laughed because Amanda herself once hit Becca for biting her. She ended up taking the girls to her mom's and I told my kids to come back. Amanda has been texting me that she'll be back tomorrow and the kids needed to be gone. I was ignoring her but finally said this was their home and if she was comfortable she could pack up and leave. My parents came over and basically told me I wasn't wrong but shouldn't have said she should leave. I know there are some things you can take back but at this point I almost mean it. I would hate to deal with another divorce but Amanda has been so terrible to my older kids the past few weeks I honestly feel like she's become a different person. Edit just to clarify some things, when we had every other weekend plus Wednesday custody my wife would take the girls to her parents on Wednesday only, and I would take the youngest to dinner. Before we had kids she'd go to dinner but our girls aren't the best at restaurants. She would be here on weekends. My son is not violent. His stepdad believed in violence as a form of punishment which I do not and never did, but that's why they asked to live with me. Sage has gone from apologetic to fully devastated about this. She offered to go back to her mom's as long as Liam didn't have to. I told her that would never be necessary. She did not mean to hit her sister, and Becca was incredibly upset about biting her. We are working on it. But we are a single-income family and I can't afford an OT outside of my insurance. I am probably going to utilize the school's OT, though despite what Amanda said. Also our youngest was not planned but things seemed to be getting better so we were excited. I did get a vasectomy after that but I love all my children. Stories number 2. My father made me realize how deep-rooted pedophilia is in certain internet trends. So this happened a few years ago but I still think about it because it made me realize how blind and openly accepting, i.e. brainwashed, I was to things I was basically fed on the internet as a kid. I was watching TV with my middle-aged father and he was trying to find a decent channel to watch on his cable when he switched to this music channel that had a K-pop girl group performing on stage. I thought nothing of it and was waiting for him to change the channel when I noticed he was perplexed. He asked me, "Why are they wearing school uniforms? Aren't they like 20? Since I practically spent 1/3 of my life on the internet, it didn't strike me as weird, since I know a lot of people like to think of the Japanese school uniforms as an aesthetic and try to mimic it in their outfits, and I've seen Twitch streamers dress up as one or in a maid outfit for fun. So I said, a lot of people like to dress up in them for fun or because they think it looks cute, and it's basically a popular trend in Japan where adults think they look cute. That's when he replied with, "But why do they think it's cute? It's just an outfit that children and teenagers have wear to school as discipline. Why do adult women wear it, and why do men like to see them in these children's clothes?" I had no words because it never occurred to me until then that school uniforms are so prevalent in Asian media because of the number of pedophiles that exist and basically inhale this kind of stuff. It really made me rethink about how brainwashed some of us are into blindly accepting things as okay or even righteous because that's what we were fed when we were young and impressionable, and how parents should be more involved in the stuff their children are consuming. Like I shouldn't be rethinking everything I thought was normal all these years at 20 years old. Yeah, I was stupid to not realize this sooner, but I learned about the whole Japanese uniform craze when I was like 15, so me being young and naive just blindly accepted it. Stories number 3. My coworker tried to sabotage my weekly reports and ended up getting themselves written up. I work in a small department of a mid-size institution. It's the sort of office where everyone knows exactly which desk drawer you keep your candy in, and helps themselves sometimes, so it's hard for anyone to be sneaky for long. I've been in this role for about 6 months and recently started noticing weird typos and mistakes showing up in our weekly client update reports that I handle personally. Normally, I'm pretty meticulous, so at first I assumed I was just tired or losing focus. Then one morning, my supervisor asked for a quick chat. She pulled out a printed copy of that week's report, circled random nonsense lines in red, and asked me what was going on. It looked like I'd typed entire sentences in wingdings. For context, it takes effort to deliberately switch to wingdings, and it's not something you can just accidentally do. I was completely baffled. The files on my computer were perfect and I had the version history to prove it. So I started double-checking the final PDF after it left my hands, and guess what? The text was being changed after I submitted it, before it went out to clients. Some lines looked like normal English from my end, but by the time the PDF was emailed, there were random fonts, phrases repeated 4 times, and even a client name spelled completely backward. It's like someone wanted me to look incompetent. I told my supervisor that something weird was happening, and she agreed to keep it quiet and investigate. The next week, she set up a shared folder that tracked every single edit along with the user who made it. Sure enough, a few hours after I uploaded my final doc, my coworker, Stephanie, opened the file under her login and started making these sabotage edits, highlighting entire sections and changing them to weird fonts, leaving them that way, and saving. HR got involved once we had the evidence. Turns out Stephanie had been telling some folks I was gunning for her position, and she decided to preemptively make me look bad. Joke's on her though, she got written up for tampering with my work product, and I heard she's now on a performance improvement plan. Personally, I think she should have been fired on the spot. She offered me a flustered apology in the break room, saying she was just stressed and insecure. I'm still a little uneasy around her because, to me, messing with someone's work is beyond petty, especially if it risks damaging our reputation with clients. Anyway, that's the drama. I never expected to become a detective at my own job, but at least we put an end to the sabotage. Now I'm double-checking all my files in that shared folder, because once trust is gone, it's tough to get back. Stories number 4. Aita to leave my husband because of my stepdaughter. I'm 32, and met Jake, 41, 10 years ago at a NYE party. My coworker invited me, and Jake was friends with her husband. He was insanely handsome, so I made the first move. He was nice but didn't seem all that interested. Later, I asked my coworker to set us up, but Jake said no because he thought I was too young for him. I didn't give up and ended up texting him directly, convincing him to go on a dinner date with me. He finally agreed, and we hit it off. He was super respectful, and we had a lot in common. A year later, we moved in together. After I graduated from university, he helped me get my first job, and we started traveling and even bought our own place. Being with Jake felt like a dream. He always put me first, made me feel special, was so thoughtful, and helped out a lot around the house. When I told him I was pregnant and said I'd terminate if he wasn't ready, he pulled out a ring he'd already bought and proposed on the spot. He said he wanted to be with me forever. Everything was amazing, until Jake got an email from his ex out of the blue. Turns out, he has a 12-year-old daughter he didn't know about. His ex never told him she was pregnant and moved away to be closer to her family. Now, she's getting married, but her fiancé doesn't get along with Jake's daughter, so she wanted her to come live with us. Jake went to pick her up from the airport, and we ended up giving her the baby's room. The nursery I was decorating. I said it was fine, the baby could stay in our room for now. When I showed her the room, she looked at me and said, "Great. A crying baby soon, huh? Don't expect me to babysit, FYI. I just told her, don't worry, I wasn't planning to. She hates me. Anytime I try to talk to her, she either ignores me or tells me not to. So, I've stopped trying." Jake has been bending over backward to connect with her, taking her shopping or to games, but she doesn't want to hear anything about the baby. If she catches me showing Jake an ultrasound picture, she gets upset. Jake even asked me not to bring up baby stuff around her. If I try to join them on their outings, she gets mad again. Jake keeps telling me to be patient and that she's adjusting, but I'm starting to feel like an outsider. Jake is no longer affectionate to me. Maybe he is exhausted or doesn't want to upset her. Either way, I don't even get a hug or a simple kiss anymore. The baby's due soon, and honestly, I'm terrified. It feels like my baby won't even be allowed to cry because she might get upset. On Christmas, I got her AirPods, and when she opened them, she said nothing. At least she said, "Thanks for the watch Jake gave her." Would I be the asshole if I left Jake and stayed with my parents? I love him so much, and I get that he's in a tough spot, but I feel so unloved. I'm scared it's going to get worse once the baby is here. Added later, someone DM'd me that maybe Jake knew about this kid all these years and was in touch with X and didn't tell you. That's why he is confident it's his kid. I don't know, he seemed very surprised. I'm going to clear this up tonight. I just wanted to say thank you to the person who DM'd me and said Jake probably already knew about the baby and was just acting surprised. Spot on. He did know about his daughter way before meeting me. His name is even on the birth certificate, and he's been paying child support this whole time. Turns out, he cheated on the mom while she was pregnant, and that's why she left him. All these years, he straight up lied to me. The whole nice guy act. Total facade. He's a liar and an absentee father. He's apologized a million times, but I'm done. Done. He lied to me for years and acted like, OMG, I have a long-lost daughter. Nah. He is making all the excuses in the book to justify his lies. I don't care. I'm done. I'm staying at my parents' house now, and I'm furious. I wish I had never met him. Deleting this account soon too. Stories number 5. Aita for making my mother cry after telling her what I thought of my stepfather. I, 28F, have never liked my stepfather, 60-something. They got married when I was already 18. He is the type of privileged guy who looks down on wait staff and thinks refugees should just work harder if they want to make it. Typical entitled prick. Since the beginning he has never made any effort to get to know me. Despite that, sometimes he would try and jokingly roast me the way my siblings do to each other. But we do that because we're close, but he's seriously never even done as much as ask me how my day went, so I don't know why he'd do that. I am close to my mother, so I'm largely civil. Sometimes I roll my eyes in his face though. I hate him. I live abroad but happen to be home for the holidays this year. I was talking to my mother and she randomly mentioned that her and my stepfather can't wait to be grandparents. I asked if he had kids I didn't know about. She looks confused and says, "No, the baby you will one day have." I stared at her for a bit and asked if she was serious. She said, "It's not that he's trying to replace your father as grandfather, but it would be nice to acknowledge him as a grandfather, especially after everything he's done for us. It's not easy to marry a single mother of 4. I should add here that my father is still around and pays for 50% of the expenses for my younger siblings, and my mother makes good money, so it's not about money. I've never received a dime from the man. I lost it. I told her if she wants to acknowledge that, it's fine, but she should get him a best husband card because he has never been anything like a father to me or even a friend. I told her that I've been in therapy because of the situation, of them trying to make him my new father, because he hasn't tried to bond with me at all. I didn't understand why he thought it was okay to banter with me even though he was a stranger to me, and it was starting to cut deep that my refusal to accept him as a parent was pushing myself and my mother apart. I learned in therapy that it was the responsibility of her and my stepfather to try and build a bond, but they didn't make any effort to start that relationship. Relationships may go both ways, but I was the teenager in the situation. A teenager who already had a father and didn't want another. I told her I don't like people who don't have empathy for refugees and people struggling economically, and he's never done anything positive to improve my view on him, so over my dead body he will be considered the grandparent of my future child. I basically blew up because it's been over 10 years of her trying to make me see him as another parent when I have a perfectly good father, and it was difficult for me to see my once close relationship with my mother dwindle as a result. She cried, "My stepfather is avoiding me and it's kind of awkward." But all my siblings agree with me, with one saying I should have just kept it to myself to keep the peace. But this isn't the first time I have expressed discomfort about his actions and that step-parent relationship being forced on me. For an example of the roasting I'm talking about, I would be at the dinner table trying to do a Wordle or something. He would walk past and out of nowhere say, "Why are you playing Wordle? I thought it was only for people who liked using their brains." Then he'd laugh and walk off. Like if that was my brother I might laugh, but again we are not close. Aita. Stories number 6. I moved into my BF's house and I haven't been able to sleep well for 3 weeks because he doesn't let me. I had a breakdown last night and broke a lamp. I'm going to stay in a hotel tonight, Aita. I moved into my BF's house, he owns, 3 weeks ago and it's been really hard. We have been fighting a lot. Many of our fights are because he doesn't let me sleep. I work 9 to 5 so I have to wake up at 8ish. He works whenever he wants so he doesn't have a set sleep schedule. I used to go to sleep 11 to 11:30 p.m. prior to living with him. I compromised to 12 to 12:30 a.m., but there are nights he goes to bed 4 a.m., 5 a.m., 6 a.m., 7 a.m. There is a master bedroom and a guest bedroom. I was sleeping in the master and he would go in and out disrupting me so I have yelled at him. He tells me, "Give me 10 minutes and I'll be in bed." Hours go by he is still not in bed, and making noises the kitchen or living room. He told me you can go to sleep without me. There is a lot of noise when he comes into the master and he says that's where all his things are there so he needs to go in and out. I tried sleeping in the guest room, does not have a lock, but when I do so he comes into there and disrupts my sleep instead of just going in the master. I have only been getting 5 to 6.5 hours of sleep for weeks now, very broken. Yesterday evening I told him I have a doctor's appointment at 8 a.m. before work so I have to be up at 6:30ish. I got ready for bed at 10 p.m. in the guest room and was watching TV on my computer with a plan to go to sleep at 11 p.m. I put a note on the door, saying, "I have to be up early, please be considerate." I fell asleep at 11:30ish with my eye mask on, fan on for white noise, always use this, sleep podcast, and he came in 3 times while I was sleeping and woke me up. He was drunk, turned on the light, pulled up my eye mask. I begged him every time to let me go to sleep because I have to be awake early. Then he started making a lot of noise in the hallway saying he was having 8 strippers over. Making sex noises in the bedroom. I told him, "I'm leaving, I just want to sleep, why don't you let me sleep?" I was on my hands and knees on the floor crying and he said, "I'm sorry. I'm sorry, I was just playing I'm a jerk." I told him I need to go get some sleep and my plan was to just sleep in my car. It was now 1 a.m. I left and he's calling me telling me he is sorry and he's in bed, can I come back and we can go to sleep? I come back and he is not in bed, he is in the basement getting laundry. I said I want to go to sleep. I try to sleep again and he then comes in and starts cuddling me telling me he loves me and he's sorry. I ask him to come to my appointment with me tomorrow and he agrees. I said I have to go to the bathroom. I go pee and when I come out he is in the bathroom. 10 minutes go by and he's still in there. I start screaming at him to come, he says he's peeing. Then I go and open the door and he closes it before I can get in. He tells me he's taking NyQuil. I just freaked out, I go into the bedroom and pull off everything on the dresser onto the floor. I then turn over the lamp nightstands, ended up breaking one. He pushes me onto the bed and there is a necklace that he said he can't find. He is freaking out and I'm scared so I tell him I'll help him find it. We find it. It's past 2 a.m. and we go to sleep in the guest room. He is on my side so I just go into the master and sleep there until my alarm goes off. I wake him up and he starts getting ready and he notices his front veneer is gone, was there last night. He accuses me of taking it. I said I didn't, I try to help him but I have to go to my doctor's appointment so I say let's go and I'll help you find it afterward. He says he wants to find it so he stays. On the way there he texts me, "You don't care about me, get out and leave me alone. You are one of the most selfish individuals I met." I don't respond. Then he calls me saying he found it. I go to my appointment, get back home and I have to work 9 to 5:30 p.m. today. IWFH, he is sleeping as I type this. I am going to get a hotel tonight and look into moving out this weekend. I feel horrible for throwing stuff on his dresser on the floor, but I can't take this constant lack of sleep. Aita. Second update, context, this is a different relationship than my last posts. I started dating this guy in February 2024. He actually proposed to me at the end of May 2024 after a few months of dating with a stunning engagement ring. I said I wasn't sure because it was so soon, wore it for a day and gave it back. I said I wanted us to know each other better and live together before that step. I accepted a contract startup position in July with my job halfway across the country and was gone for weeks at a time. He asked me to move into his apartment before I accepted that position, but I told him I wanted to see it though. I would come back for 1 to 2 weeks at a time and we would stay together. He always stayed up later than me until 1 to 2 a.m., but he would put headphones in, turn off lights, be quiet/respectful when I was sleeping. It was only after I moved into his house, mid-November, that things escalated. He told me he wanted to put me on the deed of the house, however, I declined. There is a safe in the house where he keeps cash, probably drugs too. Maybe a gun. He was quite dodgy about answering this. He asked me if I wanted the code. I said no, I didn't want to be accused if ever anything was missing. The red flags were there and my intuition was trying to warn me, should have listened to it sooner. I slept for 11 hours. Yay! My parents live 5 hours away. I was planning to see them Christmas Eve. I called and told them everything. Staying with a friend tonight, my dad offered to pick me up tomorrow and I'll be there for a few weeks, at least. I will be breaking up with my BF, but I want to be a few states away before I tell him. If he shows up at my parents' home, we're going to call the police. My dad and my brother said they'll come back with me later on to get the rest of my belongings, if I even want to go back there to get them. I just know I can't do it right now. Thank you all. Stories number 7. Lesbians wear waistcoats. This Christmas, my 13-year-old daughter decided to break out what she called her ultimate power outfit for the family gathering. It was a crisp white button-up shirt, a sharp black waistcoat, and some well-fitted black chino trousers. She looked fantastic, like she was ready to either take over a high-stakes poker game or cosplay as her favorite anime character. Which, as it turns out, was precisely her inspiration. Now, as a parent, I've always believed that if my kid feels comfortable and confident in what they're wearing, then I'm all for it. Seeing her beam with pride at her reflection that morning had me thinking, yep, Christmas is already a win. Enter Grandpa. The moment he laid eyes on her outfit, his face went through a series of emotions that could only be described as a particularly dramatic weather pattern. First, there was the storm cloud of confusion, then a flash of lightning realization, and finally the thunderous boom of judgment. Without missing a beat, he muttered something along the lines of, "I didn't think she was one of those," and stormed off into another room like he'd just been personally offended by her wardrobe choices. At first, I was confused. One of those? One of those what? Fashion icons? Anime enthusiasts? People who look like they own a vineyard and know a lot about wine? But no, it quickly became clear after some light interrogation, and some very heavy sighing on my part, that he meant lesbian. Now, let me pause here to set the scene. We're in a living room filled with tacky Christmas decorations, the kind that scream, "This was on sale at the dollar store," and there's Bing Crosby crooning in the background about a white Christmas. Meanwhile, I'm standing there, absolutely fuming, trying to decide whether to launch into a lecture about how archaic and ridiculous his assumptions were or to simply take my kid and leave. But before I could get a single word out, my daughter, my glorious, quick-witted, utterly fearless daughter, stepped up to the plate. "Really, Grandpa?" she said, with a look of utter exasperation. "The only thing I thought would make me look like a lesbian is if I had another woman's boobs in my hands and a smile on my face." You could have heard a pin drop. Grandpa's brain visibly short-circuited. His mouth opened, closed, opened again, but no words came out. He looked like a goldfish that had been yanked out of its bowl and was frantically searching for water. The rest of us? We were dying. My partner had to excuse themselves to the kitchen to keep from laughing out loud. My daughter just shrugged and walked off like she hadn't just delivered the line of the century. I stood there, torn between wanting to give her the biggest high five of her life and bracing for the inevitable fallout. For the next 2 hours, Grandpa barely said more than a handful of words. Every now and then, he'd glance at my daughter, shake his head, and go back to sipping his lukewarm coffee. The awkward tension in the air was thick enough to cut with a knife, but honestly, it only made me love my kid more. Of course, I'm fully expecting a sermon to come my way soon, probably some long, drawn-out rant about respect for elders and traditional values. But you know what? I'm ready. If respecting my kid means offending a few outdated sensibilities, so be it. The thing is, moments like these remind me just how incredible my daughter is. She's not just smart and funny, she's brave. She didn't let an ignorant comment make her feel small or question her choices. She stood tall, dressed in her favorite outfit, and clapped back with the kind of wit most people could only dream of having at 13, or at any age, for that matter. So, yeah, Grandpa might not appreciate her style or her sass, but I do. She's unapologetically herself, and honestly, isn't that the best Christmas gift a parent could ask for? Stories number 8. Aita for cutting ties with my brother-in-law after his arrest, even though it was a sting operation. I, 44F, recently cut off ties with my sister's husband, 38M, after he was arrested for attempted child exploitation. He was caught in a sting operation, meaning he was communicating online with an undercover officer posing as a minor and arranged to meet for a sexual encounter. My sister, 39F, is devastated and insists he's innocent. She claims he has a sex addiction, which led him to engage in risky online behavior, but he never intended to harm an actual child. She believes the sting operation was a setup, or that he misunderstood the situation. The trial has been delayed, and the uncertainty is agonizing for my sister. I feel guilty for cutting him off, especially since he hasn't been convicted. I worry that I'm judging him too harshly and that I'm abandoning my sister during a difficult time. However, I also have serious concerns. Protecting children, the charges are incredibly serious. Even if he didn't intend to harm a real child, his actions demonstrate a dangerous disregard for the safety of minors. My own values, I cannot condone behavior that exploits or endangers children. My relationship with my sister is important, but I must also uphold my own moral code. My children's safety, I have children, and the thought of someone who engages in this type of behavior being around them is terrifying. I feel torn. I love my sister, but I cannot reconcile myself with the potential danger her husband poses. Aita for cutting him out of our lives. Disclaimer, this is a fictionalized account for the purpose of discussion. It does not condone or minimize the seriousness of child sexual abuse. Discussion points. The complexities of family relationships. How do you balance loyalty to family with your own moral convictions and the safety of others? The impact of sex addiction. How does sex addiction contribute to risky online behavior? The importance of due process. While respecting the presumption of innocence, how do we address the potential harm caused by individuals who engage in online behavior that exploits or endangers children? The role of support systems. How can family and friends support survivors of sexual abuse while also addressing the complexities of these situations? Stories number 9. I accidentally saw a text on my 28M girlfriend, 29F, computer saying that she feels she's out of my league. I feel like I have to break up with her. TLDR, went to help GF with presentation, accidentally found a convo between her and her sister where my GF said she's out of my league, unambitious, eat like shit, would never want kids with me even if we did want them, we don't, and would resent me for making less money than her. I've been with my girlfriend for around 3 years, everything has been pretty good overall. This happened a few weeks ago so I've had time to think on it. My girlfriend had an opportunity to go on a free sunset cruise, fancy dinner, drinks etc., with some coworkers but had a presentation due that night which needed a bit of work, so I said I'd do it so she could go. Turns out it needed a bit more work than I thought. I was on her MacBook and I want to send it to myself to work on the desktop, Windows, so I can be more comfortable. So I open messages, can't find my name in the recent convos, and just type it in the search bar. When you do that on a Mac it turns out that it'll show the contacts, if you search a name, and also show the most recent conversations where the search term, my name, was mentioned. Right before I click my name I notice a message from her sister that says, I like, Op, a lot but I feel like you are very much out of his league and he should try harder to be a better man for you, so I open it, maybe shitty I know, to which my GF responded, I agree. I read their convo, nothing more, and she went on to say that she thinks I'm unambitious, eat like shit, will resent me for making less than her, and that she wouldn't want kids with me, even if she, GF, did want kids. She said that I was the one thing keeping her happy though. This was said during a fight over her never being willing to visit me 1 hour away and leaving me to do all the traveling, but then saying she was going to fly 6 hours one way to visit her male friend, only context given, for literally one day. She'd fly in at night, spend one day together, then fly back the following day. It turned into a fight because she was willing to fly 12-hour round trip and spend hundreds of dollars on a flight, and we both have no money because we're students so it's a big deal, but wouldn't travel 1 hour away to visit me for an entire weekend. I'd agree that she probably is out of my league, and she will almost definitely make more money than me, but we both will have doctoral degrees and I expect to make 120-130k and she'll probably make 250-300k, so there is an income disparity, but it's not like I'm not making good money regardless. I don't think I eat that bad, and I'm slim, low end of normal BMI, so I don't think I'm completely out of touch there, but definitely not eating salmon and steak every night. There was no mistreatment on either end. I try to do nice things with and for her within the means of my $0 student salary, and her parents like me. I just think she doesn't like me. I almost feel dumb for asking, but I'd be a fool if I didn't break up with her, right? Update, yeah, we're done. Stories number 10. Aita for telling my husband to throw the breakfast away because he kept complaining about how he didn't want it. I'm 26F and my husband is 29M and food has been a constant stressor in our household. My husband is a super picky eater and he's been eating out every day 3 times a day the last few months due to his mental health, and McDonald's and KFC makes him feel good. We both agreed that it's not really good for his health or the wallet, so I've been trying my best to cook food that's appealing to him. He usually eats a breakfast burger at McDonald's. I've seen him eat Turkish bread rolls with bacon and eggs too. Yesterday we went to Woolies together as he wanted lollies and snacks and I picked out Turkish bread, bacon, spinach and breakfast patties for breakfast today. At the checkout he said he didn't want the breakfast items as they were fatty and he's trying to be healthy. I asked what he was going to eat then and he said he was going to eat rice and egg at home. I said that's fine, just ask the lady at the checkout to take the items as we didn't pay yet. It was a bit busy and he didn't want to wait, so he said wanted the breakfast items. I then took the items to make him breakfast as he said he's hungry. Then he said the bacon I chose was gross cause it was maple flavored. He then made a scene and said he didn't want breakfast. He said he never wanted it and he's just eating it because we bought it. I told him, why did you buy it then? I told him if he was upset about throwing it away, I can eat it later and he can just eat McDonald's. He started calling me names and saying I was barking like a dog. I got upset and went upstairs. Then he told me to come back downstairs and finish cooking it. And at this point I was writing this post. And when I came downstairs, he said he wanted a divorce, so I went back upstairs. Then he said he was sorry, so I came back downstairs and he started complaining and saying I never cook for 5 years of our marriage, which is why he needs to keep eating McDonald's. Which is completely false. I cook every single day. I used to cook a lot of food for both of us, but the last few weeks he didn't eat any of it and I threw out a whole tray of lasagna because it was too cheesy. I threw out a whole bowl of spaghetti because it was not flavorful enough. I made burrito bowls and he didn't like the chicken. I made it again with different spices and he ate it yesterday. I made a whole butterflied grilled chicken with spices, bread, salad, which he ate last night too. Now he took a photo of my coffee cup right before he yelled at me to make breakfast, which I didn't wash because he was yelling at me. Now he's yelling at me telling me he wants to divorce and I'm making him go crazy and it's my fault, he takes drugs, I'm an etc. What the hell, and now he's going to McDonald's and threw it away. Edit, thank you for all the advice everyone has given me so far. I've been feeling pretty down this whole day and just came back to Reddit this arvo. I've been out the whole day at the shops just window shopping to take my mind off things. Stories number 11. Aita for kicking my wife of over a decade out of the house for cheating on me again. My wife, 30F, and I, 31M, were high school sweethearts. We moved out of our parents' houses together, got married, had kids, and grown a lot, at least I thought. Over the course of our relationship, she has cheated on me at least a dozen times, sneaking off with old flames or coworkers to make out and more. Some of these times, I only found out about years after being married. For some reason, I've always forgiven her, but what happened this week was unforgivable. We had 3 Christmases over 3 days, my parents, hers, and a third 2 hours out of town, with her grandparents and extended family. I drove both ways, which isn't uncommon, but when we came home she asked if she could go visit her best friend. She's just really sad to be all alone for Christmas. She told me and I told her to go, because for some reason I still trusted her. You could say no. But after a full day of driving and playing with our kids I was beat. I told her to go, but not expect me awake when she got home. Maybe I'll wake you up with a surprise, I'll be home by midnight. My instincts told me something was wrong, so I reached out to her best friend, who never responded. 4.5 hours later she comes home, and loiters outside, on the phone with a guy she works with, the guy she's been cheating on me with all month, apparently. I pulled every crucial detail of her latest dalliance out of her over the next several hours, distraught to be back here, again. The following morning, I put her on blast of Facebook, told her brothers and friends directly, and kicked her out of the house. Next I'm divorcing her for good. Aita for protecting my emotional well-being, and separating myself from this repeated abuse of my trust. Stories number 12. Aita for not forgiving my sister for sleeping with my husband. This past summer I, 28, found my sister, 30F, and, soon-to-be ex-husband, 30, in bed together. I got home late and the two of them were fast asleep in bed together, naked. I lost it and they were falling over themselves apologizing and saying it was the biggest mistake. I made the two of them leave and then I told my ex I was filing for divorce the next morning, something I followed through on. They both begged me to change my mind. I ignored them and continued on. My ex eventually realized I was truly done when I wouldn't even consider marriage therapy with him and when I gave him back both rings which were rings from his family. I wanted to have him gone after finding him with my sister and had no interest in selling them or anything for money. I just wanted him gone and to send the message that I was not going to work on our marriage. After leaving my house my sister went to our parents and my dad came to stay with me leaving mom with my sister. He was there and his support meant everything to me. And in all of this he has been the most supportive. Mom has offered some support, but she also wants me to forgive my sister. She brings up how much my sister has apologized. Of course, she and my ex didn't use protection and she got pregnant. This was a big deal and my mom made this a very big deal to me. My sister's marriage ended last year because she had many fertility problems, PCOS, endometriosis, and her eggs weren't healthy enough to try IVF, and her ex-husband wanted biological kids. It was a big blow to learn her chance for bio kids was so low and then her marriage is over. I was there for her throughout and said I would help her however I could. I even said I would be open to carrying a baby for her in the future. I loved my sister. We were so close. So her actions hurt more than even my ex's. And then she was pregnant. She had an abortion. She told me she knew I would never be able to accept her if she had his child and she wanted me more. She told me she would not do that to me. My mom begged me to stop her aborting and forgive her when she was willing to go that far for me. My dad had to stand in and help me because mom was so mad that I was letting her go through with it. She broke after the abortion and her messages got more pleading. But I wasn't willing to forgive her. And I'm still not. I won't forgive her, I made that clear. I also won't talk to her. They claimed it was just that one time because they've been drinking but I can't ever feel the same about her. I helped her through the worst time in her life, offered to help her have kids one day in the future and she does that to me. I want her to suffer for what she did. I don't want to let her off easy. I don't want to act like things are okay or give her another chance. I don't want to be stabbed in the back again. Dad was with me for Thanksgiving and Christmas because mom insisted my sister was going to be there. I refused to be there for that reason. My mom is on my case bad about it. She told me I'm behaving worse than my sister. That my sister made one mistake in a moment of alcohol-infused madness but I'm making sure my sister hurts and driving the family apart. She told me we were always so close and I confirmed we had been and I told her she shattered all that. I told her I regretted being a good sister to her because it got me betrayal from the two people I loved most in the world and I'll never be able to stop associating her with doing that to me. Aita. Stories number 13. Why are Giselle Palico's husband's pictures not being shown by the media? I've been following the case of Giselle Palico closely for some time now, and I have to say, I'm both disturbed and perplexed by the way the media has handled the situation. For those of you who might not be familiar with the details, Giselle Palico is a woman who bravely waived her right to anonymity after being the victim of a harrowing crime. Her story, which involves multiple rapists, including her own husband, has been widely reported. And while her courage in coming forward is admirable, there's one glaring issue I can't seem to ignore: the media's treatment of her rapists, particularly her husband, Dominique Pellicot. When I first heard about this case, I was horrified and disgusted by what had happened to Giselle. It's beyond tragic, and to think that she had to go through such an ordeal is simply unimaginable. But as I followed the media coverage, I started to notice something very strange. Giselle's name and face have been plastered all over the media, as they should be, because she is the brave woman who has chosen to stand up and demand justice. Her decision to waive her anonymity allowed her story to be heard on a global scale, and that is something to be praised. However, as I continued to follow the case, there was one thing I couldn't understand: why hasn't the media shown any pictures or identified the rapists involved, especially her husband, Dominique Pellicot? Why is it that every news outlet continues to publish Giselle's name and face, but the rapists remain anonymous? This question has been bugging me for months, and I feel like it's something that needs to be addressed. Let me be clear, I fully respect Giselle's bravery, and I understand the emotional and psychological toll that comes with publicly sharing such intimate and traumatic details. But Giselle made the conscious decision to waive her anonymity for a reason, so that her abusers, including her husband, would be held accountable and the world would know their identities. So why is the media failing to do that? It doesn't seem right to me. In fact, it feels like an injustice on top of the injustice Giselle has already suffered. When the media reports on cases like this, it's supposed to be a way to bring attention to the perpetrators, to make sure that people know who they are and that they can't hide in the shadows of anonymity. But here we are, and I haven't seen a single reputable news outlet publish a photo or even the name of the actual rapists. How is this possible? The question I keep asking myself is, why are the rapists being protected? Why is the media continuing to shield them, particularly Dominique Pellicot? He is Giselle's husband, and he is one of the key people responsible for the abuse she suffered. The world should know who he is, just as they know Giselle's name. If Giselle can have the strength to expose herself and tell her story, then why are these rapists being allowed to hide behind a veil of secrecy? It almost feels like the original intent behind Giselle waiving her right to anonymity, to ensure that all of her rapists would be exposed to the public, has been lost somewhere along the way. The media, by protecting the identities of these criminals, is essentially undermining her decision. It's as if they're saying her suffering and bravery don't matter as much as protecting the reputations of her abusers. Why is that the case? Why is it that, in this day and age, the victims of such heinous crimes are thrust into the spotlight while the perpetrators get to remain in the shadows? Some might argue that the media is protecting the rapists because they have yet to be convicted, but that doesn't seem like a valid excuse. We've seen time and time again how the media can report on people accused of crimes, especially high-profile ones, and their faces are shown, their names are released, and the public is made aware of who they are. So why is it different in this case? The argument that the rapists deserve anonymity until proven guilty is one thing, but let's not forget that the very nature of their crime, particularly in the case of Dominique Pellicot, suggests a pattern of abuse and manipulation. It's not like Giselle made a baseless accusation. She has made the difficult choice to expose her pain and allow others to see the truth. Shouldn't the media be doing their part to ensure that justice is truly served by exposing those responsible for her suffering? The reality is, the shame in this situation should belong to the rapists, not the victims. It should be the rapists' faces that are plastered across the front pages of newspapers and trending on social media, not Giselle's. If anything, the media should be shining a spotlight on the true criminals in this case, not allowing them to remain faceless and nameless. It's frustrating to watch as Giselle's name is discussed, dissected, and shared, while the identities of her rapists are being kept under wraps. These men committed disgusting crimes, and it seems like they are being protected simply because they have yet to be convicted. But when you think about it, this is the system working in reverse. The victims are being treated as if they are guilty of something, while the perpetrators are being treated with more respect than they deserve. I think about Giselle and how incredibly brave she has been throughout this entire ordeal. To speak out and waive her anonymity in order to help others who might be going through similar situations, that takes an immense amount of strength. So why, then, are the media outlets not respecting her decision to expose these men? Why are they not following her lead in exposing these rapists for who they are? I know that some may say I'm being too harsh, that the media is simply doing what they think is right by withholding certain details for the sake of legal process or other considerations. But to me, it feels like the media is missing the point entirely. The shame should not be on Giselle for revealing her identity, it should be on the rapists who thought they could get away with abusing her. It's time for the world to see the truth. The names and faces of the men who did this to Giselle, including her husband, Dominique Pellicot, should not be hidden. We should know who they are, just as we know Giselle's name. If the media is truly interested in justice, they need to follow Giselle's lead and stop protecting the criminals who've caused so much harm. In conclusion, I believe the shame and the spotlight need to be redirected. The rapists' identities should not remain hidden, they should be held accountable for their actions. And Giselle, who has shown unparalleled courage in this situation, deserves to have her story told in full, with the names and faces of those who wronged her exposed to the world. Until that happens, I'll continue to question why the media isn't doing more to stand with her and ensure that justice is truly served. Stories number 14. Aita for sending my half-sibling's mom a recording of what they thought of me and getting them in trouble. So this post is going to need a lot of context. I'm going to put it all here for ease. I, 15NB, have two half-siblings, 17F twins. We share the same dad. My dad cheated on their mom with mine. And it wasn't until I was 4 to 5 that she found out and divorced our dad over it. Understandably, I'm not an idiot, and I'm well aware my existence probably ruined her life. My sisters hate me because of this. They blame me for their parents' divorce, because according to their mom, had it just been an affair, she would have stayed with their dad, and they could have gotten over it in therapy or whatever. But because I was born, their mom had a permanent reminder of how shitty our dad is, and that is all my slut of a mother and I's fault. This year, it was our dad's turn for custody on Christmas, they alternate years. That's why they're staying with us. Since we only have 3 bedrooms, the twins share a room. The walls in our house are pretty thin, so you can hear just about everything. My sisters absolutely hate me. Our parents have tried therapy, even their mother has tried taking them. It never works. Most of our relationship is I stay locked in my room ignoring them when they visit, because if I don't, I'll usually end up in a screaming match with them. Especially when I was younger, they tended to get violent. So for everyone's sake I try to stay out of their way because God knows they won't stay out of mine. Like I said in the beginning, our walls are thin. I can hear basically everything since our bedrooms are right next to each other, and they know this. Earlier this week, they were talking, loudly, about me. They started thinking I was asleep because my lights were off, and they didn't hear me moving at all. They were upset they had to spend Christmas with my mom's side of the family instead of our dad's because my maternal grandmother is suffering through dementia. She isn't well and my mom wanted to spend Christmas with her since she's worried we won't have many left. My sisters blamed me for them not being able to spend Christmas with their family. Essentially, they were saying things to the effect of how my mom is a gold digger, a slut, etc. They were misgendering and dead-naming me, saying how the two of us, me and my mom, are just dirty N-words and blah blah blah. This isn't new, they've said things like this before. They've been punished for it previously, but their mom never enforces the consequences, their punishment essentially disappears because I've never had solid proof. Their mom just assumes I'm trying to frame them. I ended up recording it this time because I wasn't an idiot for once and actually remembered to use my phone. For even more context I guess, last year I tried to take my life. I'm not going into any significant amount of detail. Just that I didn't succeed and I'm in therapy. My mom was the one who found me. I guess they started getting bolder since they thought I was asleep because they basically went on a tangent on how they wished they were the ones that found me, because they would have let dead name get what they wanted. It's hard to describe how legitimately triggering that was for me considering I am still struggling with self-worth issues. It was like they were fucking fantasizing about it, talking about how without me, even having to split time with their parents would be so much better because they wouldn't have to make nice with the child of dad's whore. It's hard to explain what I was feeling exactly. I was mad but also just depressed. That they resented me to that point. I'll be honest, I may have gotten a bit ahead of myself. In the morning, I ended up sending their mother the recording as well as my parents. Now my half-siblings are in huge trouble. They've gotten grounded, got all of their presents taken away, and my dad is debating just giving up his half of custody for my safety, even though I don't think they'd actually physically hurt me or anything and I've told him that. That made them feel genuinely hurt and I feel horrible because now they're convinced their dad is choosing me over them. Their mom is pissed too. She is forcing them to go to therapy and is also continuing their grounding. Apparently, the plan is for this to be a several-month-long punishments, which I didn't expect at all. They won't have their phones, their electronics aside from what's needed for homework, and from what I saw and heard a lot of things are being taken away from them. I overheard my parents saying they won't be allowed to go out with friends or go to any fun extracurricular activities, and apparently, they won't even be allowed to use their family car. A lot of the punishments seem really excessive and straight up extreme. I didn't expect it to go this far. I just wanted them to get punished for once, but I wasn't expecting their mom to go nuclear like this. I don't know the woman at all, and I guess I misjudged her reaction. I feel awful for sending the video now, but my friends say I did the right thing and that I was protecting myself. ETA, just to answer a question I saw a lot. My mom doesn't like driving on highways, so my dad had to drive her to her mother's, and he didn't want to leave his kids alone for Christmas. My maternal grandparents live a decent amount away, like 1 to 2-ish hours with traffic, so he couldn't just drive her there, drive home, then drive back to pick her up, etc. I guess he thought they'd enjoy the food and atmosphere or something. Their mom wasn't in town for Christmas and she'd made the plans in advance, so she couldn't take my half-sisters with her. Like I said, they alternate years and we weren't planning to spend it with my grandmother until December 3rd when we got the news of her diagnosis. Stories number 15. Aita for telling my husband he's not his father's bio kid and revealing MIL secrets. I've been going back and forth about this for a while, but I really need some outside perspectives on this situation. So here's the backstory. I, 28F, am married to my husband, 31M, and I've been in the family for almost 4 years now. My mother-in-law, MIL, has never really liked me. I've known this for a while, but she was very good at hiding it, at least in the beginning. But about 2 years ago, she started showing her true colors. Her comments became more frequent and hurtful. The worst came when she told me that I wasn't the right choice for her son because of my background. I come from foster care, and she made it clear that she felt I had nothing, not even a real name, since I was given one in foster care without much thought or love. Those words stung a lot. I had already felt like an outsider in her eyes, but this really pushed me over the edge. It was a hard time, and after hearing that, my husband and I took a 6-month break from her. We went no contact, and honestly, I felt relieved. But my husband, being the good son that he is, wanted to believe his mother had a change of heart. He told me that he wouldn't engage with her again unless she gave a genuine apology. Eventually, MIL did apologize. We both believed she meant it, so we started having contact with her again. But the thing is, it was never the same. Before the apology, she had seemed to accept me. But after those comments, I saw her for who she really was. And I think she knew that I saw through her. So, while we started speaking again, the relationship was strained. FIL, on the other hand, was always warm and supportive of me. He never had an issue with me. We'd meet with him separately, and he'd apologize for his wife's behavior, saying he was considering divorce over it, but he didn't go through with it, at least not initially. MIL seemed to express regret over what she said, which kept the family somewhat together, at least on the surface. Fast forward to the birth of our first child together. That's when things got really complicated. MIL chose that moment to reveal something that has forever changed everything. She told me that she had had an affair years ago, and that my husband wasn't actually FIL's biological son. The worst part? She had never told anyone about it, not FIL, not even my husband. She dropped this bombshell on me as though she was trying to punish me for coming between her and her son. She admitted to having hidden this secret for years and told me she wanted to take it to her grave. To make matters worse, she showed me letters from the bio father, who knew he was my husband's father, or at least suspected it. I was completely shocked. And then she asked me to keep it a secret. She begged me not to tell my husband, claiming that it would devastate him. She said that he adored FIL and that revealing this truth would ruin his relationship with his father. I knew how much my husband loved his dad, and I also knew that revealing this secret would tear him apart. It was a lot to process, and I spent several weeks thinking it over. The thing is, I knew that if I didn't tell him and he found out later, he would be devastated for a second time. But this time, he'd be angry with me for keeping quiet when I had the chance to tell him the truth. So, after weeks of trying to get MIL to tell him herself, I even offered to be the one to tell him together with her. She refused. That's when I made the decision to tell my husband what I had learned. The fallout was immediate and intense. My husband was crushed. I've never seen him so broken in my life. But I also knew he was angry, not just at his mom, but at me for being put in that position in the first place. He knew I had no choice but to tell him, but I could see the pain in his eyes as he processed everything. He confronted Mil, and she denied everything at first, trying to paint me as a liar. But eventually, my husband and Fil went through the motions of confirming the truth with a DNA test. The results were devastating. Fil wasn't his biological father, and my husband felt like his whole life had been a lie. The situation quickly escalated from there. Fil, heartbroken by the betrayal, filed for divorce from Mil. The emotional fallout from this was more intense than I could have imagined. My husband was devastated by the revelation, and it was hard to see him in so much pain. He had to process not just the betrayal from his mother but also the fear that his relationship with his dad might never be the same. It was a tough time for all of us. And here's where it gets tricky, my husband's siblings. They've all been upset, rightfully so, about what their mother did. But some of them are also angry with me. They've implied, though never outright said, that I should have kept the secret. That revealing it was the wrong thing to do, and that if I had kept quiet, things would have been better for everyone. A couple of them have distanced themselves from both me and my husband. They look at us differently now, and it's clear they think I've caused unnecessary pain by exposing the truth. It's been a tough few months, and while my husband still stands by the fact that I did the right thing, I can't help but feel the weight of the consequences. The family is fractured now, and I can't help but feel responsible for some of it. I never wanted to be the person to rip the family apart, but I also knew that if I didn't speak up, my husband would have resented me forever. I hate that this has caused so much hurt, but I also hate that my Mil put me in the position where I had to choose between betraying her trust or betraying my husband. I've tried to maintain my stance that telling the truth was the right thing to do, but the judgment from my husband's siblings is hard to ignore. I feel like I've lost a lot, and I don't know if there's any way to repair the damage. So, Aita for telling my husband about his true biological parentage and revealing my Mil's secrets, even though it caused so much pain. Stories number 16. Aita for refusing to let my sister bring her dog to my house after what happened last time. First off, thank you to everyone who offered advice and support on my original post. I was feeling a lot of pressure and was starting to second-guess myself, but I really appreciated reading all your comments. To clarify a few things before I get into the update, I don't hate dogs. I grew up with pets, but since moving into my own place, I've chosen not to have any. I also have some health concerns, allergies, which make it more difficult for me to handle dogs in an indoor environment. I love my sister, but the last time her dog was at my house, it caused major stress. Now, for the update. After my original post, I had a long conversation with my sister and mom. My sister kept saying that I was being unfair by not allowing her dog to be part of the family celebrations. She compared it to me banning her child, which I told her was a pretty extreme comparison, considering her dog is over 80 pounds, rambunctious, and wasn't exactly well behaved at my house last year. To be honest, things got a bit heated during our conversation. I tried to explain that it wasn't about her dog, it was about having a peaceful, enjoyable family gathering. My house isn't pet-proof, and I didn't want to spend the entire evening cleaning up after the dog or worrying about my guests' safety. The dog knocked over a glass of wine last year, too. But she kept saying that I was being too controlling and that I didn't care about her happiness. At this point, my mom started to get involved. She's been trying to play the family unity card, saying that my sister's dog is like a family member and that we should make exceptions to ensure everyone is happy. I held my ground, and it felt like I was in the middle of a tug-of-war. The next day, my sister texted me saying she would come if I made the choice to accept the dog as part of the family. Otherwise, she said, she'd just skip Christmas dinner altogether. My mom called me in tears, saying I was making the holiday divisive and that I was being difficult. Honestly, at that point, I started feeling like maybe I was being unreasonable, but I stuck to my decision. So here's what happened: my sister showed up without the dog, but she was very upset about it. She barely interacted with anyone at first and spent a lot of time on her phone. It was super awkward. By the end of the night, things had calmed down a little, and we were able to enjoy dinner. But I still feel like the tension is lingering, and I'm honestly wondering if I made the right choice. Some of the comments I received, especially about setting boundaries and considering my own well-being, made me feel better about my decision. But now that it's all over, I can't help but feel guilty for causing this rift. My sister has barely spoken to me since, and my mom is still upset. So, for the final question, did I make the right choice? Was I being unreasonable, or was I just standing up for myself? Thanks again to everyone for your advice. Stories number 17. My parents gave me an ultimatum about getting married. So, this is a bit of a complex situation, and I'm really torn about what to do. I'm 16 years old, 24 weeks pregnant, and I'm living with my boyfriend, 16M, and his brothers right now. Let me give you a bit of a backstory to catch you up on everything. When my parents first found out I was pregnant, it was rough. They were shocked, disappointed, and honestly, they kicked me out. I wasn't expecting it at all. I thought they would support me through this, but instead, they turned their backs on me. I went to stay with my boyfriend and his brothers, who have been nothing but supportive of me, and honestly, I don't know where I'd be without them. But being kicked out by my parents was a huge blow to me. I felt like I lost everything. But fast forward a bit, and things started to get better. My relationship with my parents seemed to be improving. After some time apart and a lot of hard conversations, they started reaching out more. We'd text and talk on the phone occasionally. It wasn't perfect, but I thought we were making progress. I thought things were starting to heal. Then came Christmas. I was at my parents' house, and I thought we were going to have a nice holiday together, trying to move forward from the past. But that's when they dropped a bombshell on me. They sat me and my boyfriend down and gave us an ultimatum. They told us that if we didn't get married, or at least start planning our wedding, before I gave birth, they would completely cut us off. They said that they couldn't support us or continue to have any kind of relationship with us if we didn't get married before the baby arrives. Let me tell you, I was floored. It felt like a punch in the gut. It was like all the progress we'd made over the last few months was wiped away in a single conversation. I had never, ever imagined my parents would put me in that kind of position. I don't think they fully understood what they were asking or the pressure they were putting on me and my boyfriend. Now, here's the thing, I absolutely adore my boyfriend. I love him, and I can see myself married to him one day. But we're both 16. Neither of us is ready for that level of commitment. We're still kids in a lot of ways. We're trying to navigate everything with the pregnancy, living situations, and figuring out how to be good partners and future parents. But the idea of getting married right now feels like a lot to take on. I just don't think it's the right time for us. At the same time, I don't want to lose my parents. I've always been really close to them. I love them, and I've always been someone who valued family. The thought of losing that connection is terrifying. I don't know how I would handle it if they completely cut me off. The idea of no longer having them in my life, especially after everything we've been through together, feels like a huge loss. But I'm also really shocked that they would put me in this situation. It feels like they're giving me an ultimatum without truly considering how unfair it is. I'm not asking for them to agree with everything I do, but I thought they'd at least support me in the decisions I'm making for my own life. This pressure, this marriage or nothing stance, has really shaken me up. It's as if they want to control the outcome of my life instead of letting me and my boyfriend figure things out for ourselves. I don't know how to navigate this. I've been thinking about it non-stop, and I just don't know what the right decision is. Part of me feels like I should just give in and start planning a wedding to avoid further confrontation with my parents. But another part of me knows that doing that would be rushing into something neither of us is prepared for. It would be a decision made out of fear, not love. And I don't want to make that kind of decision. I'm asking for advice because I'm lost. I need to figure out what to do. I don't want to lose my parents, but I also don't want to get married just because of pressure. I want to be true to myself and my boyfriend and make the right decision for us. But how do I handle the guilt of potentially losing my parents if I don't do what they want? How do I tell them that I'm not ready for marriage without them feeling rejected or angry? Also, I live in Oklahoma, where it's legal to get married at 16 with parental or guardian consent, which complicates things even more. I don't know if that makes things easier or harder, honestly. Any and all advice would be deeply appreciated. I just need some perspective on how to navigate this mess. 3 less than 3. Update. Thank you so much to everyone who took the time to read my post and offer such supportive advice. Your comments and messages have been overwhelming, in the best way possible. I didn't expect so many people to share their personal experiences and offer such thoughtful perspectives. It has really helped me think through things more clearly. After a lot of discussion and reflection, my boyfriend and I have decided not to get married before the baby arrives. We've talked about it extensively, and we both feel that rushing into marriage would be unfair to ourselves and our future. We want to make sure that when we do get married, it's because we're both ready, not because we feel pressured into it. That said, we're also trying to figure out how to tell my parents. We know it's not going to be an easy conversation, and it might lead to them being upset, but we're both committed to being honest with them. We're not just planning to ignore them or pretend everything is fine, we want to tell them the truth about why we're making the choice we are. I'm also starting to think more about what cutting us off would mean. If my parents choose to do that, it will hurt, but I'm not going to let it control my decisions. My boyfriend and I have been through a lot together, and will continue to figure things out, even if it's without their support. I still don't know what the future holds, but I feel more confident now in our decision. We're going to move forward together, for the sake of our baby, our relationship, and our own well-being. Thank you all again for your support, it really means more than I can say. Stories number 18. Aita for cutting off my best mate after he cheated during our Rome trip and begged me to cover for him. I, 28M, have been best mates with Callum, 29M, since high school. We've always had each other's backs, so when he invited me on a trip to Rome, I didn't hesitate. It was supposed to be a week of sightseeing, great food, and a break from our routines. A few nights into the trip, Callum hooked up with someone he met at a bar. He's been with his girlfriend, Emma, 27F, for over 4 years. She's an amazing person who has always treated him like gold. The next morning, Callum casually admitted what he did and brushed it off, saying, "What happens in Rome stays in Rome." He even laughed about it. Then, he asked me to back him up if Emma ever got suspicious, saying, "You're my mate, just tell her we were at the Colosseum all night." I told him I wasn't comfortable lying for him, and that cheating wasn't something I could condone. He got defensive, saying, "It's not a big deal, it's just a trip fling. Don't ruin my relationship over nothing." When I got back to Dubai, I decided to distance myself from him. Callum called me out for being self-righteous and said I wasn't acting like a true mate. Some of our mutual friends are siding with him, saying I should have just stayed quiet and not made it my problem. Aita for ending a friendship because of this. Stories number 19. Aita for yelling at my wife when she was trying to be helpful, but was just making things more difficult for me, and didn't listen the first 2 times I told her just to back away. I was carrying something heavy up some stairs today. I was on the bottom of it, and was taking it 1 step at a time, by leaning backwards and using my own weight to move it up 1 step. My wife, who was at the top of the stairs, decided to try and help me by pulling it from her side. But, every time she did that, it just put more weight on my side, and was knocking me off balance. So I told her to stop and move out of my way. She didn't listen. I told her again, and she didn't listen again. She tried turning it into some "I'm not just a weak woman" kind of thing, but at that moment, I really just needed her to move out of the way so I could finish getting this thing up the stairs. I didn't have time or breath to explain to her exactly how her attempts at helping me were making things worse. So, finally, I yelled at her, "Fucking move out of the way." We've been together for 25 years. This is literally the first time I've ever yelled at her. She moved. She went to another room and began giving me the cold shoulder. But I was able to finish moving the very heavy thing up the stairs. I apologized to her afterwards. But I didn't start with yelling. I only went there after she wasn't listening otherwise, and I really needed her to get out of my way. Edit, she tends to do this a lot, making any issue into a gender issue. I've long since accepted that that's just how she sees the world. It's one of her qualities, but this was not the time or place or situation to have a conversation about gender issues with her. Stories number 20. Aita for not returning the company laptop on their timeline after I was let go. About 2 weeks ago I got laid off a job I had just started in the summer, due to budget cuts from our client, or so I've been told. Not only did I lose my job right before the holidays, I was also a week from being eligible for severance, so I didn't get any. They sent boxes to ship back 2 monitors and a company laptop. Remote work, I constantly got teased over by my former boss. He would always, unprompted, make remarks with a snarky tone like, "Damn Jenny, we all can't have new shiny laptops like you," or, "If I had your laptop I could do X better than anyone else," etc. Environment was kind of toxic. Anyway, a box arrived last week and I requested for them to schedule a pickup since it's huge and my only option would be to lift out of my own pocket to a FedEx, which I absolutely won't do. The earliest date for pickup would be today, December 27th, which didn't work for me because I'm away for the holidays, and their response was, "Well, can't you come back to hand off the box?" Answer was no, but they could schedule the pickup up anytime after January 5th when I'm back home. I got roped into an email chain with HR, IT and some other people where they're saying I must return it before the new year because former boss returned his laptop to the IT company expecting to have mine ready to work by the time the holiday break is over and he couldn't otherwise do this job. I told them, respectfully, that wasn't really my problem, which I might be an asshole for, but I also think they're being unreasonable expecting me to cut my family time to return this box during the holidays. I just hope to not get in any legal trouble for it, never been in this situation before. But I really don't think I should be accommodating them like that. Am I being too petty? Stories number 21. Aita for refusing to host my niece and sister at Christmas and sending them to a hotel. Between Christmas and New Year, my husband, 39M, and I, 37M, are hosting about 30 people, including my sister, Gil, 23, and her daughter, Ella, 6, with another 10 who came for Christmas dinner. The dinner was black tie, and my husband and I set up a table in a room adjacent to the dining room for the children, which is, in my experience, pretty standard practice, as sitting at with the adults and having to adhere to stricter table manners might be a bit overwhelming. Especially as they're all quite young, the youngest is 4 and the oldest is 9. When I was explaining how dinner would be arranged, Gil said she wanted Ella to eat with the adults as she didn't want her by herself. I said I understood her concern, and if she's worried she could just check on Ella from time to make sure she was alright, as the other parents undoubtedly would be doing. When Gil insisted, I said that while it would be a shame not to have her with us, everyone would understand if Gil wanted to eat with Ella at the children's table. This seemed to make her particularly frustrated and she accused me of trying to humiliate her, and followed it with, I didn't know such a F-slur would be so uptight about the rules. This was completely out of the blue. Our relationship is nothing out of the ordinary for siblings, if a little distant just because of the age gap. She hasn't ever, in front of me, said that word before either, so I doubt she meant it in a particularly malicious way or would have said it if she wasn't a bit drunk. While I can sympathize greatly with the worry about her daughter, she is a young mother, after all, I wasn't going to tolerate that sort of language. She refused to apologize, and said I need to stop treating her like a child and I can't force her to do anything. I was already somewhat stressed from hosting and just didn't want to deal with her anymore, so my husband and I agreed she and Ella should leave after dinner, and we paid for a nearby hotel room. Gil sent me a text saying how inconvenient it was that she couldn't stay late because when Ella got tired, she had to leave and get to the hotel. I've been rethinking it and do feel like an asshole for not allowing them to stay until morning at least. Edit. Reading the comments, some seem confused about the idea of a Christmas family dinner with children being a black tie event. One misconception is that it was a family dinner. While family was there, they only made up half of the guests. The other 20 were friends. Also, the reason why there were children there is because they're all, other than the 10 friends who only came for Christmas dinner, staying for a week, and so those who have children brought them with them. Also, black tie is much less of a big deal among my friends and family, it's just a dinner jacket and a bow tie. At university, every dinner was in black tie. It is probably a cultural difference. In the USA I think people tend to be much more laid back when it comes to clothing, so black tie may feel excessive in a way it doesn't in the UK. Stories number 22. I refused to buy my ex's son a Christmas present. My ex and I share 2 children. 8 and 9, and when I was pregnant with my second, I found out that my husband had had an affair with a coworker and it resulted in a child who is 10. Now his AP sent me a text saying that it was unfair that my children got expensive Christmas gifts while her son didn't. She said it was unfair because he always compares himself to my children. My ex works part-time and she doesn't make a lot of money. My ex and her have shared custody of their kid and my children live with their dad 2 weekends a month. I run my own business and it is pretty successful. I usually only buy 1 gift each to my children because I hate overconsumption culture, instead they get 1 good gift. I didn't answer her, but I don't believe I have any obligation to buy her son anything. This year my children spent Christmas with their dad. They got their gifts before they left and they didn't take anything with them. After New Year we are going on our annual vacation. She also thinks it is unfair that I don't take her son with them. That I am hurting her son's mental state. I am not doing this on purpose. I am not manipulating my children with gifts and trips. We had this tradition even before my children were born. I feel guilty that I don't feel more guilt though. Stories number 23. I told my parents to be nice to me and they cried LOL. I'm in my mid-20s and I told my parents I would like them to be nicer to me. I gave examples. Don't repeatedly tell me how stupid I am after an interview when I have 6 more lol. Telling me I was lucky to have my now ex-BF and that if I didn't date him I would just date a loser was rude. Telling everyone I was groped on public transit is also inappropriate. First they said I was psychotic, cruel, disgusting, my brain was wrong, that I'm scaring them. Then my mom cried white womanishly. As a fellow white woman, I joined in. Then my parents brought up weird grievances with me, like I didn't get my mail promptly at home. My mom accused my boyfriend of turning me against them. My mom has hurled the same insults about every minority a relative has brought home, including my BF, they're abusive, controlling, etc. My parents have no reason to think this. She was concerned I'm defensive of my boyfriend, and that she never feels defensive of my dad. Like okay, you also don't like dad? I told her that she can't talk about how smart I am while at the same time, treating me like an emotionally disabled toddler that is emotionally manipulated. Like pick a lane please. Am I smart or not? I went through all of my mom's really stupid arguments, shot them down, I'm a lawyer, which makes her insinuations that I can be easily manipulated so easily especially moronic, and she was basically left saying she didn't like my boyfriend because of astrology. Okay. Lovely lol. Then my mom said my grandma was really stupid, and that I shouldn't confide in her. My grandma and I are very close. Okay lol. So then after all of this my mom acknowledged I wasn't crazy, what I said did happen. Yay lol. She kept asking for more examples of her being mean. I didn't feel compelled to say more because she's just going to deny it so it's worthless. My parents each told me I made the other one depressed. They both told me their dads beat them. I said that's sad and I'm sorry but not really relevant. They said they want the best for me. I said that at my job I regularly work with crack addict parents, and nearly all of them hope their child is doing well in school/happy. Intentions aren't all that matters lol. Anyways my family settled on me telling them if they say something upsetting. Yay. I'm completely fucking exhausted. I want to sleep for 5 days. Stories number 24. Wibta if I don't accept my mom's takesies backsies after she ended our relationship. Then I try and make it relatively short, spoiler it's not short, but for context I, 26 FTM, have been my mom's, 54F, emotional regulation for my whole life. I know she has her own perspective on what's been going on, but for extra perspectives from people close to the family, including people close to her, some people mentioned to me and my siblings a few years ago that the way she treats us and our father is not normal. My closest friends who I confide in about the things she has said to me have suggested that I should go no contact or end my relationship with her. Another friend has suggested that she is emotionally abusive. My therapist thinks she has narcissistic traits. My sister has said I should cut her off and that she might do the same. My brother's ex, who planned to marry him and have children together, explicitly said that our mom would not ever be allowed near her children. I have spent the last year and a half trying to work with my mom to improve our dynamic and explain to her how and why I am hurt by the way she treats me. I never had the intention of ending the relationship, and have been trying really hard to get us into family therapy or to have a mediator or other unbiased third party to help us work through this. She has refused because she doesn't trust therapists. We've been texting on and off about our issues, and have talked in person once. It hasn't been going well. Since we're not having any outside help, I've been trying to understand her perspective better to see how we might move through this. Some of what I've learned about her. She believes that intention is way more important than impact in practice. This means she does not apologize for hurting someone's feelings unless she meant to hurt them and feels bad about it. When someone tells her they've been hurt by something she says, she just explains that she didn't mean to and expects things to be fine again. She believes that all she can do if she has unintentionally hurt someone's feelings is explain herself. Apologizing is not on the table, trying to understand why it was hurtful is not on the table, committing to not do it again is not on the table. She genuinely believes that a bad mental health day is more than enough excuse to treat people poorly and lash out. Our last conversation via text was in September. She had claimed that she still didn't know what she had done to hurt my feelings, so how could we possibly move towards repair if she didn't know what we were repairing? I sent her a bullet point list of only the things we had already talked about that had happened in the past year and a half, and her response was that this conversation was absurd and she was busy until November. This whole time, I had hoped we could work through this and understand each other. I thought we could beat the odds and actually have repair. Her track record of repair is not good, but I had hope. In past conflicts, she has ended her relationships with 1, my older brother 2, her own brother 3, her father 4, her cousin 5, her best friend and boss. So I was working against the odds, but surely we could talk like normal adults. I want her in my life, and I want my dad and siblings more present in my life too. I haven't been able to spend as much time with them during the past year and a half because of her. Apparently, any time I am mentioned in her presence, she shuts down, gets angry, storms off, etc. I don't want to hurt their relationships with her, so I've been reaching out less often, particularly to my dad, who I miss a lot. Yesterday, she messages me out of the blue to say she doesn't see how we can work this out. I ask her what that means. She says the same thing. She doesn't see a way forward, she doesn't know how to fix this. I tell her it sounds like she's ending our relationship and ask her to clarify if that's what she was doing. She confirms and says she doesn't know what else to do, that she's been willing to apologize for one way she hurt me, has a bit of a pity party about me deserving better and having a life without being hurt constantly by my mom. I repeat what I've been saying this whole time, that I am just asking for an apology, an attempt to understand how she is hurting me, and a commitment to behave differently. I tell her that if she wanted to apologize, I've never stood in her way. If she wanted to understand, she could have listened any of the times I've explained it to her. I told her if she wanted to treat me differently, she could have started. Lastly, I tell her it's disappointing that she's made this decision, but I won't stand in her way. She replied with a single-sentence apology for one of the hurtful things she has done. I can't help but read it with a sarcastic tone, although I think she may have intended it as a half-assed olive branch / an attempt to keep talking and undo her decision minutes earlier to end our relationship. I haven't responded. I don't think I want to. I don't think she is actually willing to hear me out or change how she treats me. Is that an asshole move, to accept her decision to end the relationship but reject her minuscule apology? TLDR, my mom ended our relationship after a year and a half of me trying to get her to understand how she is consistently hurtful to me and her sidestepping any accountability. When I accepted her decision and repeated what I had been saying all along about what I needed for repair, apology, understanding, change in behavior, she sent a one-line apology that rings hollow now. Would I be the asshole if I just leave her on read and accept that the relationship is over? Over the last few weeks I was holding strong in my decision not to accept her takesies backsies. She messaged me several more times since then, each time with some unhinged prospect that made it harder to not respond. She had decided to speak to her lawyer and strategize without me at length about whether or not they could get me a restraining order against my childhood abuser. She said she wouldn't move forward until I okayed it. And followed up a week later. She added a big ol' spiel about how, if we were to keep trying to work things out, she thought I needed to consider that every event has 3 points of view, mine, hers, and what really happened. And that I needed to consider her point of view about the times she has hurt me. She also went on a bit of a rant about boundaries, saying that I can have personal boundaries that affect only me, but that it's not okay for me to have boundaries that she has to abide by in order to have a relationship with me. She seems to think that we need to mutually agree to my boundaries, and that if she doesn't agree, she doesn't have to respect them because it would make her feel unsafe in the relationship. I broke down and responded. Nothing too long. I said, hey, don't go talking to a lawyer about my situation without me there. I told her that her earlier decision to end the relationship and then do takesies backsies resulted in a loss of trust in her. I told her I was not willing to continue the back and forth messages because it wasn't working, and suggested 2 ways forward. Family therapy. Give up on resolution and go to minimum contact. 1 brunch a year for a catch-up. No family dinners or holiday invites. I said she could pick either or none, but I wasn't willing to keep doing what we've been doing. I also responded to her rant about boundaries. I have boundaries regardless of whether or not she likes them, and she can ask questions about them to understand if she doesn't agree, but pushing them results in me reducing or taking away her access to me. She responded on the 23rd, with perfect timing to blow up the family right before Christmas. She wrote a freakin' novel, responding to a dozen of my earlier messages plus my most recent one, sentence by sentence. She would copy and paste a sentence of one of my messages, then respond to it. Over and over. I haven't seen anything like it before, and I don't know what she hoped to actually accomplish. Most of her responses were, I don't know how I have hurt you, I don't know what you're talking about, or, I don't understand. But a lot of these things were explained at other points in the same message, or we had talked about them earlier, so, what the hell? Receiving that message was a firm turning point for me. I've had several points in the last year when I've thought this would be the end, and had started to accept that there was no real relationship for us. A key one was the unanimous response to my previous post, so thank you Reddit for affirming my experience and supporting. I took a couple days and responded yesterday so that she wouldn't be able to blow up Christmas Day when the rest of my family would be with her. I was of course not at her Christmas. I told her I'm giving up. That she doesn't understand what boundaries are or how they function in healthy respectful relationships. I told her that it's not worth it for me to keep explaining my pain just for her to act like I'm keeping her in the dark. I wrote a paragraph about the types of ways she has hurt me. I thought y'all might like the final paragraph, in which I am absolutely being unkind, but I don't regret this one. It feels like I have a gaping hole in my life where a caring mother is supposed to be, and instead it's just you. There are people in my life who are far more deserving of that space. And I'm no longer willing to reserve it for someone who hasn't earned it and isn't willing to set aside their ego for the sake of their relationship with their child. Stories number 25. Would I be the asshole here if I accepted my mom's house, cutting my siblings out of their inheritance? A little background for context. My 47F dad passed away 15 years ago. Obviously, leaving my mom, 72F, a widow, who never remarried. Including myself, they had 5 children, 1 passed away, leaving myself, 1 older sister, 2 younger brothers. My parents were very poor while we were growing up. The 2-bedroom, with 7 people, house we lived in was willed to my parents because my mom took care of our grandmother later in life. Fast forward 40 years, dad's gone and mom's gotten very sick, multiple heart attacks and strokes. Leaving her in a position where she needs almost constant care. That's fallen on me. My children are grown, and I've spent the last 30 years being a stay-at-home mom, so I'm the one with the time and availability. My siblings show up when push comes to shove. Holidays, her birthday, and if mom gets hospitalized. But other than that, they rarely show up. Mom has insisted I get her house and everything else. But she's only said this to me, my husband, and my kids. She doesn't want to have that conversation with my siblings. Yet during her multiple hospitalizations, my siblings constantly remind me that if she dies 4 ways, everything gets split 4 ways. At this point the paperwork is done. My main concern is when and how do I tell them, taking everyone's feelings into consideration. Stories number 26. Aita for waiting to divorce my wife until it was a good time for me. My ex-wife and I were married for over 20 years and have 2 children together, 22M and 20F. For most of my marriage, things were pretty balanced. We both shared housework and childcare responsibilities. We were each stay-at-home parents for over a year after each child, her with our son and me with our son and daughter. We always had agreements on how we wanted to divide work and generally had decent communication. This changed when my oldest went to high school. My wife got a new job that was both very demanding on her time and was 50% travel. This meant that I had to handle everything about 2 weeks per month, and when she was home she wasn't holding up her side of the work with agreements. I did my best to be accommodating and we worked through redistributing chores/housework a few times to make it fit her schedule better, but a lot of the work just kept falling to me. When the pandemic happened, things got worse, but I tried to just suck it up because I knew the lockdowns were temporary. Finally, when things opened back up things continued to decline and I asked to go to counseling. She missed a lot of our meetings and just didn't commit to it. At this point I decided that I wanted a divorce. Unfortunately, it was a really tough time for the family. My son was getting ready for college in person after his freshman year being remote, which was both financial and logistical challenge. At the same time my daughter was also having some issues with depression and I had become her main support person with my wife gone half the time. I made a decision to wait until my daughter was in a better mental state and our family was in a financially stable place before I filed for divorce. I did my best to continue to contribute and was essentially a single parent for 3 years. On a few occasions I brought up counseling again, but my wife said things were good and wouldn't go. We pretty much didn't have sex for that period of time, and there was one summer where she essentially moved to North Carolina for 6 weeks for work. She came home on some weekends. Last year, after my daughter started sophomore year of college and she was in a better place mentally and emotionally, I sold off some of my stock investments to create a trust for my kids to ensure college was covered. Then I filed for divorce. At first my wife was really pissed, then she left to live in North Carolina again. When she came back 4 weeks later, she said she wanted to work through it, but I told her I had made the decision to leave years ago and wasn't interested. We eventually worked through mediation and got an amicable divorce. My kids live with me now and support me, but all of my in-laws and even most of my family outside of my sister think I'm asshole. They believe I should have forced the issue more when we started counseling and either divorced or made it clearer to my wife how important counseling was to me. They've called me selfish and some of my in-laws are refusing to interact with my kids when they're at my house. For example, my daughter FaceTimed her grandmother once this summer and she hung up once she saw that my daughter was at my house. They also created a bit of a scene at my son's graduation in the spring, refusing to acknowledging me and demanding that my son choose to celebrate with them or me rather than having dinner together as a group. I encouraged my son to go with them and we had our own celebration later, but something happened at the dinner and my son has lived with me and been almost no contact with them since. I honestly feel like I did what was best for my kids, but now it feels like their mom's family is punishing them and I feel like a terrible father. I admit that it might have been more mature to address the issue head-on with my relationship with my ex, but I felt that it was about more than just the two of us. Frankly, I feel like my lack of backbone years ago has made this divorce worse for my kids, but I also believe that if I had to do it again, I would still prioritize my kids over my own feelings and make the same choice. Aita Reddit, holy crap, this blew up. First off, thanks for folks who provided feedback and comments. I really felt like shit and both the positive and negative comments helped me get a little perspective on things. I've seen a few comments come up multiple times, so I figure it's worth answering them here before I move on. This is an account I created to ask an embarrassing dating question earlier this year. I created it because my main username is recognizable and I reused it now because I don't really want to air my issues associated with a known username. When my wife took the job, we were doing well financially, but the job still came with a big raise. I was making about $200,000 and the job she took gave her a raise from about $80,000 to $140,000. That was enough that we could go from saving enough to have an emergency fund to having enough to pay for our kids' college outright. We both work in tech, but she works for a defense contractor and some of the work needs to be done on-site and only one of the offices related to her work is near where we live. When we originally discussed the job, her plan was to work in the high travel role for some time then try to transfer to a lower travel role based near us. She got promoted a few times and staying near our home wasn't an option unless she took a bit pay and title cut. When we divorced I was making about $280,000 and she made a little over $300,000. Some folks were also confused by my stock comment. I'm a software engineer for a big tech company and about 20 to 30% of my salary comes in the form of RSUs, restricted stock units. I'm not an investor by any means, and I was just selling off stock mostly to cover my daughter's college and pay off what debt my son had. I know a lot of people are jumping right to an affair, but I really doubt it. In school, my wife and I were the obnoxious kids who reminded the teacher about homework and she's a massive introvert. Her working late in a hotel room is much more likely than her sleeping around or keeping some secret family. There's a chance I'm wrong here, but I think this is more a situation where Reddit sometimes thinks all divorces end with infidelity. When I say we had an amicable divorce, I mean that more in the legal sense than the emotional sense. Uncontested might be a better term. The only significant asset we had that wasn't easily split was our home. My wife loves the house and I frankly wanted something different, so she bought out my portion of it. Our kids are adults, so there's no custody. Our assets are mostly divisible, so no issues there. Our salaries were comparable, so there was no alimony. We each had a car. Overall, it was pretty straightforward to divide things evenly and neither of us wanted to draw things out. We didn't end the marriage as friends by any means, but from a legal standpoint it was amicable because we decided on arrangement with a mediator and only involved lawyers briefly to actually draft the final paperwork for the judge to sign off on. Update, 4 months later. I'm still getting comments and messages from time to time about that post, so I figured I would take some time to give an update. Quick summary of the original post: my wife became more and more distant in our marriage and I decided to get a divorce, but I waited about 3 years to do it after I decided because I felt it was best for the kids. My kids chose to live with me and generally were on my side, but my in-laws and family were pretty mad at me. Things are going much better overall since the post. I got a lot of support, but also a lot of criticism which I took to heart. I have been putting in some work to mend fences and help get things to a more reasonable state. I don't expect my ex or her family to be friends with me, but I at least want to be on good terms. My relationship with my parents and family is much better and this Christmas was pretty much back to normal. My family is very conservative especially when it comes to marriage, but they finally understand how bad it had become and have reluctantly accepted. My relationship with my ex and more importantly her relationship with our kids has also improved. She has apparently been going to therapy on her own, and while she hasn't gone into details, she does seem to be a lot less angry about what happened. We decided to have Thanksgiving together so we could all talk through things with the kids. It was a bit messy and there were a lot of tears, but we also got to a place where we all understand each other a bit more. We all agree that I shouldn't have waited so long to go through with the divorce, but my ex and kids also say they understand why I did it. My ex-wife and I even had a conversation about dating, which was weird but surprisingly kind of nice. My ex-in-laws still think I'm a horrible person and most refuse to talk to me, but they have started treating my kids well. My kids went to the in-laws' place for Christmas Eve and told me went okay. We talked about it on Christmas, and while they didn't give many details, they did say they planned to do something on New Year's Eve with my ex and the in-laws, so I'm happy about that. Sorry this isn't a juicy update with anything crazy, but I was bored during the holiday downtime and thought I would log in and post some details. One thing I've learned from this, and I hope others learn too, even if your heart's in the right place, it's probably better to divorce when the marriage is over rather than putting up a facade for years. I don't regret getting a divorce, but I do wish I hadn't waited 3 years when I knew it was over. Stories number 27. He's up to something. My husband traveled for work last week and was very cagey about some packages that may or may not arrive while he was gone. He went so far to have my dad on standby to come pick it up off our doorstep before I would see it. He's been back home for 3 days and has given me strict instructions not to go into his office. I usually bring him breakfast in the morning, but I've been asked to leave it on the banister outside his door. He's also spent a good 10 hours locked up in there during his free time doing something. I can hear his tape measure wibble around and occasional bangs and furious typing. He always comes out smiling and refusing to talk about what he's doing, just that it's Christmas stuff and I should mind my own business lol. I'll admit, I did a great job with his birthday present a few months ago. But we've already decided that my big present this year is the puppy we've been planning for months and I get to bring home soon. I have no idea what he's up to in there, but I know for a fact he's working very hard to make me happy and I feel extremely loved. He doesn't know I'm about to knock it out of the park with my Christmas shopping this year. I can't wait to see who wins. Edit to add, this man was not a Christmas person when we met. But I adore Christmas and over the years my enthusiasm has rubbed off on him. I still wouldn't say he loves Christmas, but he sure does love me and making me happy. I'm so lucky to have him in my life. Update, 1 month later. I have terrible news. Today, for the first time in 13 years, I have lost Christmas. I am out of my league. My husband has surpassed my greatest expectations. It's over. We picked up our new puppy the week after Thanksgiving. The weekend before was a mad dash to get the house puppy proofed and Christmas ready. In the middle of that, husband announced that this year we're getting an 8-foot tree. We had to have my dad meet us with his truck to get it home. It looks fantastic. Since then, I've had my hands more than full with my now 11-week-old puppy. She's an asshole and I love her so much. But between the constant potty trips, forced naps, and feedings, presents kept showing up under the tree. In the fancy wrapping paper. Wrapped in hand-tied ribbons. Fixed in place by an honest-to-God wax seal. Piles of them. I asked him if he was sleeping with his secretary. Nope. He just said I've had a hard year, and I deserve a nice Christmas. I have had a hard year, through no fault of his. Just one of those things. I haven't complained, he just knew. Anyway, long story short, he got me a gaming PC. I game in bed due to some health issues that make sitting at a desk very painful. This is fine for laptop gaming, but you're somewhat limited with that medium for the newest and greatest tech. So he engineered a custom monitor stand that attaches to the wall out of the way but can swing out on an arm right in front of me while I'm sitting in bed. He built the model in CAD, which he had to teach himself to use. He bought all the individual components for the custom mount, which he wrapped individually as well as all the hardware for my PC. We're going to build and mount everything together this week. Apparently, he's been planning this for months and saving for it for even longer. He put so much time and thought into this, right down to the presentation Christmas morning. I had always written off getting a nice PC build because it's not practical to use in bed, but he wasn't satisfied with that for me. Now I have possibly the nicest gaming PC money can buy, and definitely the most thoughtful husband love can earn. I think he's more excited than I am. He loved the gifts I got for him, but we both know he won this year. He's gracious enough not to rub it in my face, possibly because he's too excited to tell me about how nice my new processor is. I don't know how either of us will top this next year, but I guess I'd better start scheming now. Stories number 28. I, 14M, got hit on by a woman at the gym. So I've been going to the gym for 3 months now. I look a lot older than I am because I'm tall, 182 centimeters, and like my face looks older. I just look around 18 or even 19. I was at the gym, I wasn't with any of my friends on that day. I was doing bicep curls. And near the mirror, I see this girl, I think she's around 19 to 21, kinda looking at me, which made kinda uncomfortable. After that, I went on to pull-ups, and after my first set, the pull-up bar is kinda isolated from everything else. She comes up to me and says something along the lines of, "Hey, I saw you and I thought you were cute. Can I have your number or Instagram so we could maybe go out sometimes?" This is translated from Italian. Now I was kinda shocked, plus I really don't understand shit in between sets. So I replied with, "I'm 14. When I tell you," she turned bright red, bro. She immediately apologized and went to her locker room. She went home after that. Now it's kinda awkward to go at the gym because if I run into her again, what the fuck do I even do? Don't answer this because it's a rhetorical question. I got too many dudes telling me I'm playing the victim, and sure. Edit, I'm gonna add it here so that I don't have to comment it again like 1,000 times. I go to the gym with a group of friends which I met here. They're all 18 to 19, the last year of Italian high school. So maybe that's also why she thought I was older. Stories number 29. Aita for kicking my boyfriend and his kid out of my house. My BF of 2 years lives with me at my house. He just got a new job and barely gets any work since it has a slow start. I work full-time and pay the bills. Christmas Eve I had to work and asked him to please assemble the vanities I got for my daughters since he was off that day and I wanted them assembled to surprise them Christmas morning. The vanities were my daughter's big gift. His son had a big gift from us as well. Throughout the day I asked him how they were coming along and he kept telling me he hasn't started them yet but that he will. When I leave work I text him that I'm picking up the girls now and to hide the evidence in the garage. He tells me there is no evidence because he didn't start them. He slept all day. I was so upset. But I simply responded with, "I am so annoyed. You had all day." His response: "I'm sorry you are annoyed." I then proceed to tell him that's what a narcissist would say and that he never takes accountability for shit. He then tells me that I expect him to jump when I ask him to do something and that he said he'd get it done, just not on my time. That I can go to the F*King Christmas Eve party, at my parents' house, and he will stay home and assemble them. I told him that who the F told him I wanted to go to the party without him. That are we not a couple? He never responded, then I get home and we get into a big argument. I eventually leave for the party with my daughters. He leaves to his mother's party. I text him that he did me so wrong this Christmas. He knew how much it meant for me to have those vanities up the next morning for my daughters. And he knew how much anxiety I have going to gatherings without him. He doesn't reply but eventually texts me that he'll see me at my parents' house. When he finally got there I didn't even look at him. We didn't talk all night and he eventually leaves. When I got home hours later I see he still had not even started the vanities. Needless to say, my daughters didn't get to see their vanities on Christmas. After their dad picked them up that day, I called my dad to please come help me assemble them so they could at least see them the next day. My dad came and helped me assemble them for 3 hours. We got one done and the other one about a quarter done. The entire time my BF was sleeping in the room next to us. He then got up just to go to a different room and continue sleeping. Didn't even say hi to my dad. I was exhausted and went to sleep early, hoping he'd at least finish assembling the second one. The next morning I woke up to the vanities being exactly how my dad and I left them. One still only a quarter done. I go to work and just kept thinking about it. How lazy he is and how he had no shame letting me and my older dad do all the work while he, a grown man, just slept all day. And I get it, my daughters are not his biological kids, but my daughters adore him. They give him so much love. Plus I'm the only one who really works and that's all I asked of him. Anyways I finally text him and tell him to either leave that day, with his son, or to start looking for a place to live ASAP. That I didn't want him in my house anymore. He just replied, okay. I get home after work, the vanity's still untouched, and he tells me that he'll leave the next day. Then I call my dad and ask him to please come help me again because I was struggling with that second vanity. He comes again, and while he's there my boyfriend starts packing and leaves with his son. We haven't talked again. So who's the asshole? Stories number 30. I told my SIL that she'll never be accepted by me. Hi, so I 18F have an older brother 22M and he's dating a girl 23F, let's call her Chloe. Chloe and I didn't get along from the beginning and I'm not honestly too sure of why. I've been very respectful. I have no hearing in one of my ears and Chloe would often use this against me. She'd whisper something rude and then why I genuinely asked what she said she would look at me all confused and say, what I didn't say anything silly, and everyone would laugh. I've talked to my brother about this and he keeps saying he'll ask her to stop. Now the issue is it was Christmas Eve and Chloe called me a deaf dumb tch because I spilled my drink on myself, and as I was cleaning it up she started yelling and cursing. That's when I said, please do date someone else because I'll never accept you. She ran out crying and now her family is non-stop calling and messaging me. My brother is kind of on my side but asked me to apologize, so Reddit, should I? Stories number 31. I'm finally with a man who treats me like a human. And it's been eye-opening to say the least. I'm 26 years old. In middle school my first boyfriend broke up with me because I said no to sex. In high school my best friend turned boyfriend just stared at me and gaslit me as I sobbed about my insecurities as a teenage girl after watching him blatantly flirt with another girl in front of me. My relationships from 2016 to 2019 included sex by coercion, lots of it, manipulation, cheating, not on my part, rape, assault, control. You get the picture. And this wasn't all just with one person. No, this was many attempts at dating. From 2019 to 2024 I was single by choice. No sex, no dating. I chose to be single because every single man I tried to date hurt me. I tried dating 2 women who broke my heart as well, but at least they never assaulted me. Mid-2024 I was raped and assaulted and ended up filing a police report and getting a restraining order. This resulted in me meeting my current boyfriend, obviously not the one who raped me. And OMG. He is so good to me. He listens to me. Respects me as a person. He's a whole functioning adult capable of taking care of himself in every way. Doesn't pressure me for sex. I knew good men exist, I just never thought I'd have the luck to be with one. The relationship is still new but already so different from my previous ones. It's making me look back and realize how bad the shit I used to put up with really was. He is so kind and caring and normal. I'm constantly waiting for the other shoe to drop, but so far it hasn't, so for now I'm going to enjoy this. I'm not going to spend this time worrying that one day he'll snap or show true colors, because good lord I would lose my shit. So I'm going to choose to believe that there are good men out there. And that I finally found one. Stories number 32. My husband admitted he was chewing his dead foot skin while we were about to get it on. Now I want to never be intimate again. Aita. Okay, so I really need to vent, and I just have to ask, am I the asshole here, or is my husband just, well, out there? Because after what happened, I'm honestly second-guessing everything about our relationship, especially in the intimacy department. I can't stop thinking about it. Let me back up a little. My husband, 33M, and I, 30F, have been together for almost 5 years now. We've had our ups and downs, like any couple, but overall, things have been great. Or at least I thought they were. So, we were having a chill night, nothing special, just snuggling up on the couch, watching a movie. I'd say we were enjoying the kind of low-key evening that often leads to some intimacy. We'd been through the usual, are you tired? Are you in the mood, back and forth, and everything seemed to be heading in a nice direction. At some point, as we were getting a little more cozy, I noticed something. I felt a weird sensation that totally threw me off. It was a consistent, rhythmic crunching sound. Like, he was chewing on something. At first, I thought it might just be him munching on his lip or something. But no, it kept going. It was, a little odd. I was lying there, trying to focus on what was about to happen, and then it hit me. He was chewing. And not in a playful or cute way. It was an unsettling, almost mechanical sound. My mind was racing, trying to make sense of it, and before I could stop myself, I blurted out. What are you eating? I wasn't even thinking when I asked, but as soon as the words left my mouth, I had this sinking feeling. Like, I knew exactly what he was doing. I can't even describe how, but it just hit me. Something in my gut told me that I was about to hear something I didn't want to hear. He paused for a moment and then said, "You don't want to know." At this point, I was starting to get genuinely concerned. I knew something was off. I sat up a little, trying to look at him, and I said, "What are you eating?" again, but this time, it was more of a demand. I needed to know. His response was what did me in. He said, "It's just some dead skin from my foot." And there it was. My worst nightmare. I froze. It felt like the room was spinning. I couldn't process what he was saying. He said it like it was no big deal, but to me, it was like everything about our relationship was suddenly flipped upside down. I had noticed little things over time, like the pile of dead skin on our dresser, or him exfoliating his feet aggressively on our bed. I thought it was weird, but I never really gave it much thought. I just assumed he was trying to take better care of his feet. But this? This was a whole new level. I don't even remember what happened next, but I just blurted out a dry, horrified "Oh." I was so grossed out that I couldn't even process it fully. But then he confirmed it. He admitted that chewing on dead skin from his feet had been a habit of his for a while now. I don't even know how to describe what I felt in that moment. I couldn't breathe. My stomach turned. I thought I might throw up. I literally screamed and dry heaved, because I couldn't believe what I was hearing. It wasn't even about the fact that he had this habit, it was about the fact that he kept it from me, something that's so beyond normal. Something that's just unthinkable. How could he be so nonchalant about it? And I can't even fathom that this was happening while we were about to get intimate. I've kissed him. I've made out with him. We've been intimate countless times, and now, all I can think about is his foot skin in his mouth. The thought of it is beyond gross to me. I feel like the foundation of my trust in him has cracked. How could I have been so blind to something this bizarre happening in our relationship? And I know this sounds dramatic, but I literally can't even imagine being intimate with him again. Every time I close my eyes, I see him chewing on that dead skin. It's the most disgusting thing I've ever heard of, and I don't know how to shake the image from my mind. I've tried talking to him about it, but he just doesn't seem to get how deeply disturbed I am by it. He's apologized, sure, but he's also acted like I'm overreacting. He says it's just a harmless habit and that it doesn't mean anything, but I can't get past the idea that he's been doing this while we've been close. I can't unknow this, and I don't know how to even begin to get back to a place where I feel comfortable with him in a physical sense. And here's the kicker, I feel like I'm the crazy one. The one who's being dramatic. A lot of people in my life have been telling me that it's just a weird quirk, and that I should get over it. I've tried to talk to a couple of my close friends, and some of them said I'm overreacting. One of them even joked that at least he's not chewing his own toenails, which honestly didn't help. But how do you just get over something like this? How do I go back to being physically intimate with him after this? I feel repulsed. I feel like the boundaries of normalcy have been crossed in a way I never thought possible. Is it really just a harmless habit? Or am I justified in feeling so disgusted and disturbed by this? I know it sounds like a small thing, but for me, it's not. It's messing with my trust, my intimacy, and my entire relationship with him. And now, I feel like I don't even know him the same way anymore. I feel like this whole time, he's been hiding a side of him I never could have imagined. So, am I the asshole here for feeling like this? Should I just suck it up and move on? Or am I justified in wanting to never be intimate again after finding out this horrifying detail? Please let me know what you think. I need some guidance on how to move forward with this. Stories number 33. Christmas blowout with my husband. I am 38F and my husband is 38M. We have been married for 10 years and have 3 kids. As background, he's always had issues controlling his temper when he drinks. He used to pick fights with me when he drinks over insignificant things. I developed ways of dealing with it, like putting a no-talking rule on the drive home from nights out. In the past few years, he's gotten into fights with various friends and family, mostly mine but on occasion his own. It's never been super bad like physical fights, but just yelling, anger. Again, it always starts with something he perceives as a slight or annoyance, which escalates into a full-blown shouting match. There is always alcohol involved. Christmas Eve was finally a breaking point where he got into a huge fight at dinner with my sister and husband. I could tell he was in a mood at the beginning of dinner and just waiting to pick a fight, and oh did he. He started a shouting match which caused a huge scene. All kids, mine and my sister's, were crying. I basically dragged him out of there and he was fuming the whole way home. Blamed me for escalating the argument and that he would have calmed down on his own, also called me an idiot in front of our kids. We ended up leaving dinner and he basically ruined Christmas. The next day he apologized to everyone but I can't get over it. I'm still super upset about the whole thing. How do we move forward? I think my husband need anger management counseling, or would couples counseling make more sense? Honestly, we have a good marriage other than this drinking/temper issue. Stories number 34. Aita to telling my GF that we should break up if she wants to kick my niece out. My brother died to car accident 2 months ago. After he died I took responsibility of his daughter, but for some reasons my GF doesn't like it. For some backstory, my brother and I both raised my niece together. He had her when he was only 17 and I was 19 back then. Her mom left both her daughter, now 14, and my brother and basically just disappeared. I think she was 23 or 24. Anyway, my brother took responsibility of his child and I helped him raise her. My brother would often joke about that she's our daughter. God damn, I miss him so much. I spoiled her a lot. My brother restricted her. He didn't let her eat chocolates or buy her games, but she would always come to her uncle and I would spoil her. I miss those days. Anyway, after my brother died I took my niece under my care. I am still going through legal guardianship paperwork, but yeah, I am going to raise her. Problem for me is that my GF told me yesterday she doesn't like that my niece is living with us. She said she doesn't want to be responsible for a 14-year-old and she is messing with our love life. I asked her what she meant by that. My GF said she's been sleeping in our bed. I said that is a normal grieving process for a child who lost her only parent. There is nothing wrong with her hugging me or finding comfort in me. She said she doesn't want her to sleep with us. I said it's only been 2 months, give her some time. If rubbing her back or massaging her head helps her fall asleep instead of crying, then that is good for her. What would she say if we had a daughter and focused on comforting our daughter instead of focusing on you? She said that would be different because she would be our daughter. I got angry and said that if she doesn't like my niece staying with me until she finds her peace then we should break up. I told her currently I am her safe place and she's practically my daughter. I raised her, I share blood with her and now she needs me. My GF started crying. I comforted her and said I am sorry for being so direct, but I found what she said a bit offensive and rude. To help her I will hire a maid, but please give her some time and show empathy towards a child. My GF has been angry at me since yesterday. She only talks to me when I talk to her and she's completely ignoring my niece, and my niece is asking me if she said something wrong to my GF. I said she's just stressed. But I am wondering why my GF is reacting like this. Did I offend her? I don't really want to break up with her, but if I have to choose between them I will choose to help my niece for now. Update. I am so surprised that my post blew up and so many people dropped their opinions and thoughts and still commenting on my post. I thank you all and those who were asking. I have been with my GF for 3 years. I also confess that I am in the wrong by not having a clear discussion with my GF and those who were saying my niece should not be sleeping with us. Instead, I should have got her own bed or stay with until she falls asleep. I already tried that. Initially she was sleeping alone, but she would wake up at night and I had to go to her and console her. She started sleeping with us because she was constantly afraid. It's trauma. She's only 14. To be honest, I don't care if she is sleeping by my side. She had only one parent. I was just a fill-in, and she lost her parents and she's an orphan now. She can sleep by me as long as it helps her. I think it's too soon to pressure her. I went to my GF and said we need to have an honest and open discussion and decide what we should do next. I apologized to her for not thinking about how she would feel, but I didn't have a choice. I had to bring my niece in. I also have to worry about all the legal paperworks, her school, my brother's assets and other paperworks. My GF said she doesn't want my niece to live with us and she has tolerated it for long enough. I said I understand, but it's kinda unfair that you would be so cruel to a child, and I expected that my partner to help me when I am going through so much legal work and care for my niece and work. I wanted your support. She said she will support me, but she doesn't want to live with a 14-year-old and care for her. Either I choose my niece or her. I explained to her that I understand your frustration and as much as I want to choose you I cannot. You already know that I also have raised her and now she has lost her father, only I can help her. She has nowhere else to go except my old parents, but they can barely help themselves. She started crying and said I am not her first priority. I said I am sorry, but I have no choice. I have been in her life ever since she was born. Not only am I attached to her, I am also related to her by blood. Now that her father is no more, she's mine and I have become a parent. It's difficult, but I have no other choice. My GF packed her bag and she left. Before leaving she said we should take our time and think this through and see if we can overcome this. We both decided that we will stay in contact and discuss in future. When my niece came back from school she asked where my GF is. I said she went to her parents. My niece started crying and started blaming herself. She said she is the reason why my life is falling apart and she doesn't have any parents. I guess she picked it up after my GF gave her silent treatment. I comforted her and said that it's not her fault and as long as I am with her she doesn't have to worry about anything, she's going to stay with me from now on. She calmed down and I took her out to her favorite restaurant, but I don't feel good at all. I am happy that I choose my niece over everything else, but I also lost my love, which makes me so fucking angry and sad. Stories number 35. Career women being demonized is so crack-brained. I've been thinking a lot about something recently, and I just can't seem to wrap my mind around it. There's this constant narrative, almost like a societal assumption, that career-driven women are somehow doing something wrong or are less deserving of respect. And let me tell you, it's downright ridiculous. As a woman who works hard, has aspirations, and is constantly fighting to keep my head above water in a world that seems to only get more expensive and difficult to navigate, it honestly baffles me how many people act as if I'm somehow the villain for wanting to be successful. For wanting to contribute to my household, for wanting to make enough money to not only survive but maybe have a little bit of a future, and for even daring to want something more than just getting by. Is that so wrong? Let's break this down. The reality is, women, just like men, need to work. And I'm not talking about the kind of job where you can clock in at 9 a.m., leave at 5 p.m., and still manage to pay rent and enjoy life. I'm talking about women who are juggling 2, 3, maybe even more part-time gigs just to make ends meet. The economy is tough. Bills are mounting. Food costs more than it used to. Housing prices are ridiculous. And the pressure to make enough money to cover all of these costs is astronomical. And yet, when a woman works hard to make a living, people somehow think it's a character flaw. Why? Why does being a career-driven woman automatically mean you're doing something wrong or neglecting your family, or worse, that you're a bad woman for wanting to provide for yourself and your loved ones? Is it so hard to understand that we, too, deserve a chance to make a living wage without being demonized for it? I don't know about you, but when I look around, most of the people I know are barely scraping by. It's not a rich society where everyone is getting everything handed to them. Far from it. We're all just trying to make it work. So why is it that when a woman dares to work toward career advancement or tries to break free from the cycle of paycheck-to-paycheck living, she's treated like she's committing some unforgivable sin? It's as if society can't handle a woman who's determined to better her situation and find some sort of career fulfillment. The harsh truth is that barely anyone can afford a house on a single income these days, let alone a family. Let's not even talk about the fact that housing prices are so high that owning a home is a dream for many. We have people criticizing career women for wanting to get promoted or make extra income while they're trying to survive in a world where housing prices keep rising and wages remain stagnant. The idea that a husband can magically solve all of a woman's problems and provide for her while she sits back and does nothing is not only outdated but utterly naive. So let's look at the reality. Two-income households have become the norm because it's not possible for one person to support a family on just one paycheck anymore. It's not about choosing a career over family. It's about survival. It's about making sure your child has the opportunity to go to college and get an education without going into so much debt that it takes decades to pay off. That's not a selfish desire. That's a basic human instinct to want something better for the next generation. But here's the kicker. When women are the ones working hard and making sacrifices, somehow they're the ones who are blamed. Why is that? Why do people point the finger at the woman who's putting in the hours, trying to make a better life for her family, while completely ignoring the fact that it's the structure of our society, the economy, and the job market that's making it so difficult for anyone, man or woman, to get ahead? And what about single mothers? Let's talk about them for a minute because they deserve so much more recognition. Single mothers are out here working multiple jobs just to keep the lights on and put food on the table. They're raising children, providing love and guidance, and doing everything they can to make sure their kids have a good life. And still, there's this notion that somehow, the reason they're in that situation is because they didn't get it right in their personal lives. As if being a single mother is some kind of failure. It's so infuriating, and it completely ignores the reality that for many women, circumstances beyond their control led to them being the sole breadwinner for their families. The thing is, security in a marriage, in a relationship, or in life in general doesn't come from just one person's income. It comes from mutual love, trust, and respect. It comes from supporting each other, whether that means having the freedom to work toward your career goals or being the partner who stays at home. Security comes from understanding that, as a team, you can build a life that's worth living. But when people constantly throw this judgment at career women, it's like they're trying to tear down the very thing that's keeping families afloat. For me, it's frustrating because I'm not trying to compete with anyone. I don't want to be better than anyone else. I just want the same respect and opportunities that anyone else is given. I want to be able to work hard, to have a career, to have my own goals, and not be told that it makes me less of a woman or partner. And the worst part? When you do succeed, when you do work hard to create something for yourself, people look at you with skepticism. They wonder how you managed it. They act as though it wasn't earned, as if you somehow took something that wasn't meant for you. And the truth is, a lot of people who are making it work in today's world have had to struggle, hustle, and sacrifice in ways that others could never imagine. And to be told it's a choice you're making just feels like a slap in the face. The point is, career women are not some rare anomaly. We are mothers, daughters, partners, friends, and professionals trying to make our lives, and the lives of our families, better. We are no different from anyone else who works hard and dreams of having a comfortable life. We are not asking for the world. We're asking for the same opportunities that anyone else has and the freedom to pursue our passions without being demonized for it. So, next time someone tries to make a woman feel guilty for working hard or for aspiring to achieve more in her career, maybe stop and think about the bigger picture. We're all just trying to survive in a world that demands so much from us, and the least we can do is support each other instead of tearing each other down for the choices we make in trying to live our best lives. Stories number 36. I need to talk to other women about the new Nosferatu. Because all of the discourse I have seen on Reddit is either high praise or calling it boring, but I have another perspective on it as a woman. I know that the director was leaning into the whole sexual energy and sexual obsession of the vampire, but holy shit, is this movie so profoundly written by men for men, it baffles me. Ellen and Anna, Lily Rose Depp and Emma Corrin, are like moving avatars of male sexual desire. For Ellen, this is shown in her possession that mimics sex and pleasure, and for Anna, it is the socially acceptable sex shown through her children and pregnancy. Ellen is a deviant who is only able to suppress this behavior through being owned by another man, her husband. We literally see 2 sexual assaults on screen of these women, along with the pseudo-sexual assault of Ellen's husband, Thomas, Nicholas Hoult. Ellen is assaulted when she says her visions of the Count make him a better lover than her husband, who then rapes her. She pleads for it to continue to show the Count their love. She cannot consent and he throws her down and immediately penetrates her upon hearing these things leave her mouth. Anna is raped as a corpse by her dying husband, in the same tomb as her female children. It is shown to be one last act of love, but throughout the movie Anna serves as Ellen's submissive privileged foil. Her husband is always pawing at her, and she is always into it but tells him not to do it in public. Her multiple children show her submission to her role and her husband's lust, and it is no mistake she is pregnant when she is dead and assaulted. 2 husbands who love their wives rape them to show that alleged love. Then Ellen allows herself to be essentially fucked and bled to death to save everyone, which mimics the intended fate of the naked Roma girl that her husband sees being led to a local vampire's grave. Yes, they may elect to allow the sex to happen, but the social pressure to do so is placed by a patriarchal society. Ellen is both psychologically and physically raped throughout the move. Anna is an ideal woman who acts out her lust appropriately and bears children and is still raped, and Thomas is a victim of the Count's pseudo-rape in the castle. Why does everyone think this is such a good movie just because it is pretty to look at? Everyone is a cardboard cutout of a person unless they are in the act of being sexualized, doing the sexualizing, and or are being otherwise victimized. It feels like this movie was written for men to sit and talk about how smart they are for getting it, while for women it is the real horror that men will haunt you to death for their belief in their ownership of your body, including using your corpse as a flashlight next to the corpses of your female children. That you may be virtuous by allowing a monster to penetrate you and drain you until the sun can do its job, otherwise you will be tied up and drugged and called crazy when you're possessed by literal evil. Stories number 37. Aita for not inviting my homophobic parents to my wedding. My parents have been silent about my relationship with my fiancée for 3 years. Never being outwardly rude or anything, and also including her in Christmas etc. by getting her a few gifts to open with the family. However, there has always been a vast difference of how they treat her versus how they treat my brother's wife. They go out of their way for my sister-in-law, invite her to things, ask about her constantly, and always have right from the first time he mentioned her. My mom and sister-in-law go out to lunch at least once a month together. They paid for nearly all of their wedding since her parents aren't in her life and my brother and her didn't have the funds. In comparison, my parents don't ask me about my fiancé ever. They don't put out an effort like they do with my sister-in-law. I bring my fiancé with me to family events, I always tell them she's coming, and they've never fought it or said it wasn't okay. Again, they aren't outwardly rude to my fiancé, but there is a distinct difference in how they treat her compared to my sister-in-law. We got engaged this last year, and as we were putting together a budget for the wedding, I asked if I could talk to my parents about contributing. I clearly stated I didn't expect anything, and would be grateful for however much or little they were able to give. I just needed to know for budgeting and planning what they were willing to contribute. My parents said, we can have a discussion later, and asked to talk to just me without my fiancé present. They then said they were not able to contribute due to morality, and not believing in the validity of gay marriage. They didn't just say they couldn't afford it, or didn't want to, they explained that my future marriage is not valid in their eyes and was immoral. They even scoffed and gave each other looks when I answered their questions about the planned ceremony. They claimed they still love me and my fiancé as individuals but cannot put money towards something they don't believe in. They also strained the idea that maybe we can be the type of family that has different views, but still loves each other. It's not about the money for me, it's about the support. I love my parents, but their view is not merely a difference in opinion, it cuts out a large portion of who I am. I told them they are not welcome at the wedding and my mother broke down about how I hate her and she doesn't know where she went wrong. I do not want my parents at my wedding if they don't support my marriage. I've dreamt about my wedding day, my dad walking me down the aisle, and which song we would dance together to since I was a small child. I wanted them to be a part of my day, not a bystander outside witness of the day, looking on in disgust. Of note, I was not invited to my nephew's baptism due to my lack of beliefs. Which, they also have never asked about my beliefs, just assume because I'm gay that I'm godless and immoral. My mom has been contacting me daily since this conversation, trying to take back some of the things she said. End of the day, we do not want anyone in our lives, let alone at our wedding, who does not support our union. Am I in the wrong here by cutting them off? It's not about money and I clarified those multiple times. I just can't emotionally support a relationship with them at this point when they don't believe in who I am. I don't know what else they expected me to do when they told me this. Stories number 38. My friends, 25F, are warning me to leave my boyfriend, 27M, together 1 year, but won't tell me why. Am I missing something? The following dialogues are non-verbatim but I made it just so you get the point. Hi, I, 25F, have been dating my boyfriend, 27M, for about a year, and I thought everything was going great or at least from my perspective. He's charming, attentive and we have so much fun together. But lately my friends have been acting really weird about him. They've started dropping subtle comments like, "Are you sure you're happy?" or, "You know we're here for you, right?" It feels like they're trying to hint at something but whenever I ask them outright they just shrug it off or change the subject. Recently one of my closest friends told me, "I think you should get out of this relationship before it gets worse," but she refused to give me a reason. She just said, "I can't tell you right now but you'll see eventually." I feel stuck because I don't see what they're seeing. Sure, my boyfriend has his flaws like he's a bit controlling about how I spend my time. For example, he doesn't like it when I go out with my friends without him and will call or text me constantly to check in. If I don't reply right away he gets upset and accuses me of ignoring him. He also doesn't really like my friends and will say things like, "I just don't think they're good for you," or, "They're jealous of what we have." He's also made some concerning comments about my appearance. He'll tell me I don't need to wear makeup or dress up because I'm already his, and if I push back he gets defensive and says he's just being honest. He even threw out a few of my favorite outfits once, saying they didn't fit the new me. Another thing that's been bothering me is how he handles money. He insists on paying for most things, which seemed generous at first, but now he uses it against me. If we argue, he'll bring up how much he's done for me financially, making me feel guilty. He's even asked me to quit my job because he can take care of everything, but I love my job and don't want to give it up. The other day, he went through my phone while I was in the shower, claiming he was just curious because I've been acting distant. I wasn't even acting weird but he said it like I had something to hide. He apologized later but now I feel like I have to walk on eggshells to avoid upsetting him. When it's just us, he's sweet and loving. He talks about our future together and he's there when I'm upset. But my friend's reactions and his behavior have me second-guessing everything. Am I overthinking this? Are my friends overreacting, or is there something I'm too blinded by love to see? I don't know what to do, and their silence is starting to make me anxious. Any advice would be appreciated. Stories number 39. I finally had a moment of, it's not the place, it's the person, with my boyfriend. I have a Christmas birthday. It's a date that's been overshadowed by the holiday chaos for as long as I can remember. Every year, my birthday blends into the background of Christmas celebrations. It's never been the perfect birthday because, well, it always feels like an afterthought. People are busy, they're caught up in the holiday spirit, and my special day often gets swallowed by the collective buzz of the season. But this year, something was different. My boyfriend decided to change that. My boyfriend, let's call him Ryan, worked so incredibly hard to give me a birthday that felt special. And when I say he worked hard, I mean it. He planned out a whole week for us, making sure each day was filled with something new and exciting. He didn't just buy me a gift or take me out for dinner, he went above and beyond. He drove me through 5 states, and even stayed overnight in 2 of them. I was in awe of how much effort he was putting into this. It wasn't about lavish gifts or extravagant gestures, it was about giving me an experience that would make me feel valued and loved. And honestly, that's exactly what he did. We spent the days exploring new places, eating at quaint little diners, and just enjoying each other's company. But what stood out to me the most was how considerate he was about everything. Every moment was about making me happy. He didn't just want to give me a birthday, he wanted to give me an experience I would remember forever. Then came the big day, the day I would officially turn a year older. Ryan had booked us a beautiful cabin for a quiet getaway, followed by a steak dinner at a nice restaurant for my actual birthday. It was supposed to be the grand finale of our trip, a romantic, intimate celebration. Everything was going perfectly. We had driven through these beautiful landscapes, laughed together, and soaked in all the small moments. It felt like the world had slowed down just for us. But then came the twist, the kind of thing that you can't plan for. We pulled up to the restaurant, and Ryan, with a furrowed brow, looked at me and said, "Ah, crap." He had gotten the location wrong. He'd made a reservation at the same restaurant, but in a different state. At first, I didn't really understand. What did he mean by a different state? I thought maybe it was a mistake at the location but a place nearby. But no, it was literally in a different state. We were in one state, and the restaurant was 2 states away. I couldn't help but chuckle because of how Ryan's face immediately went from excitement to utter disappointment. You could see that he was so frustrated with himself, but at the same time, I could tell he didn't want this to ruin my birthday. He kept apologizing, saying, "I'm so sorry, I messed up, but I'll fix this." He called a few nearby restaurants to see if they could squeeze us in, but it just wasn't working out. No luck. I could tell how hard he was trying, but deep down, I wasn't upset. It wasn't the restaurant that mattered to me, it was the thought behind everything. My birthday wasn't about a perfect dinner or a 5-star location, it was about the time we had spent together. The effort Ryan had put into making me feel special meant more than any fancy meal or reservation. In that moment, I had a thought, why not just get fast food? I suggested we grab Whataburger. It was a completely unplanned, unexpected choice, but I knew it would hit the spot. There's something about fast food on a road trip or when you're in the middle of an adventure that just feels right. And honestly, a burger and fries sounded perfect. I'm not one for fancy dining anyway, especially when I could enjoy something comforting and familiar like that. So, we made a quick stop at Whataburger, grabbed a few sandwiches and burgers, and sat in the car, eating our fast food like we were back in high school, just the 2 of us. I couldn't help but smile. There I was, in the middle of my birthday celebration, eating a burger and fries, but somehow, it was still the best birthday I had ever had. Ryan kept apologizing, saying, "I owe you a nice dinner next time, baby." I feel so bad. But I honestly didn't feel bad or frustrated. I didn't feel like I was missing out on anything. I didn't care about the fancy steak dinner we had planned or the perfect restaurant. All I cared about was the fact that we were together, and Ryan had worked so hard to make this day special for me. I felt a wave of gratitude wash over me. It wasn't the place that made the moment, it was the person I was with. It was Ryan and how much he cared about me. I felt so blessed to have someone who goes above and beyond for me, who genuinely wants me to be happy, not just on my birthday, but every day. There have been times in my life when I didn't feel like I was enough, but Ryan always makes me feel valued. His efforts to make my birthday perfect were a reflection of how much he values me, and that's something I'll cherish forever. That night, as we snuggled on the couch, eating our fast food in the warmth of the cabin, I realized something. I didn't need a perfect dinner or an extravagant celebration. I needed this. I needed someone who was willing to be there for me, someone who would make the effort to show me love even when things didn't go according to plan. I would rather have another birthday with Ryan, with burgers in hand, than have 1,000 perfect birthday dinners in a fancy restaurant without him. As I lay there that night, I reflected on how much I had learned from this experience. It wasn't about the perfect moments that we often get caught up in, it was about the imperfect moments, the ones that show you how much you're truly cared for. If this is what my birthdays are going to be like for the rest of my life, then I'm more than okay with that. In fact, I'd look forward to it every year. And now, as I reflect on everything, I realize that it's not about the place, the restaurant, or even the gifts. It's about the person you're with. It's about their love, their efforts, and their presence. Ryan made me feel so special that day, and I couldn't have asked for anything more. So, next year, when my birthday rolls around, I'll gladly take another birthday with Whataburger and Ryan by my side. Because for me, that's what perfect looks like. Stories number 40. Whipta for ghosting my ex-wife. I know you're gonna say it's fake and that you saw this Hallmark Christmas movie and I'm right there with you. Honestly, I wouldn't believe it either if it didn't happen to me. So, if you can't believe it, then just pretend and give me advice anyway like I'm a real person. Because I am. I, 32M, met Sarah, 30F, in grade school in our small town. She was my first everything, girlfriend, love, and eventually wife. We both went to college together, and after I graduated, we got married when I was 23, and she was 21. Sarah was still finishing her degree, and I worked hard to support both of us while she completed her studies. When she got her first job, I was so proud of her. It felt like all our sacrifices and hard work were paying off, and I thought we were on our way to building a life together. For 2 years, everything seemed fine, or at least, I thought so. Then one day, I came home from work and found her packing a bag. She sat me down and told me she had been having an affair with a coworker. I was completely oblivious. She was crying and apologetic. She said she loved me but she was in love with the coworker and they had this chemistry and a deep connection and that she never felt this level of excitement and attachment with me. At the same time, she seemed to be really apologetic and acted very guilty. She moved in with the coworker that night. Sarah made the divorce as quick and easy as possible. She didn't contest anything and took almost nothing. In the state we lived in, you can get a divorce in 10 days if there aren't any children involved. We filed the papers ourselves, no lawyer, couldn't afford one. After it was final, she asked if we could be friends, and I'm ashamed to say that I just broke down and sobbed like a baby in front of her, said nothing, and left. At that point, she was 23, and I was 25. A couple of years later, in early 2020, while riding out COVID in my hometown, my mom casually mentioned that Sarah had married the guy she left me for. Apparently, Sarah's parents and mine had talked about it since they're longtime friends, and Sarah's parents were hesitant about the marriage but supported her. Hearing that stung. I had done everything I could to move on, but knowing she had married her affair partner felt like reopening the wound. I told my mom, as kindly as I could, that I didn't want to hear about Sarah anymore. She understood and never brought her up again. I was broken and depressed at first, but I went to see a therapist and got on some meds. I got some certifications and, through a friend from college, I got an interview with a global consulting company. My friend was married and couldn't do the amount of travel that the job required, so he pushed hard for me for the position. I started traveling around the world and pretty much worked all the time at first. On any given day, I was either in the gym, working, or having a virtual therapy session at 3 a.m. I was a dull boy. I got into incredible shape thanks to lifting and running. Eventually, I got a long-term project in Romania and was able to meet and have relationships with women. Fast forward a few years. Recently, I had a few weeks of vacation saved up, and I wanted to spend Christmas in Reykjavik, Iceland. I went to my parents' place in my hometown for Thanksgiving with my sister and brother. Last Thursday, I was at the local independent drugstore in what passes for downtown in my hometown. It has a lunch counter like an old-fashioned drugstore. I got a cup of coffee and sat down at the counter drinking it when Sarah sat down beside me and said hello. She was super nervous and red in the face. I was shocked and just sat there looking at her. I was exploding inside, but I kept my cool outwardly. She was still beautiful. She was actually very fit herself and had lost her baby face and became maybe even more beautiful. She started off by apologizing for the way she ended our marriage. I told her she already apologized like 100 times when she dumped me, but she insisted that she was young and stupid, and over time she realized how much she had hurt me. She wanted to meet me later in a less crowded spot with fewer spies, small town, remember? I shook my head no and told her frankly that I didn't see what I could possibly get out of meeting with her again. That kind of took the wind out of her sails, and she kind of deflated. She admitted that it was probably more for her than for me. She said that I'd get closure not only for how she ended things but for the kind of person she was back then. She wanted to tell me about how she'd changed and what she'd learned about herself and what real love is. She wanted me to see that the person she became is someone that I could respect and maybe be friends with again. I wanted to get the hell out of there, so I just told her I'd think about it. She gave me her number, and I went home. Apparently, my mother and sister had already heard about it from Sarah's mom. So I'm a big dumb victim of some kind of big dumb Hallmark Christmas movie hit job. My sister, 29F, and mom, 55F, told me that they kept up with Sarah since our divorce and they know that she's changed and that I should hear her out. My dad, 56M, just shook his head and walked off. My brother, 22M, thought all of this was hilarious. I asked if he wanted to chime in, and he just shrugged his shoulders and said that since Sarah and I knew each other from when we were kids, I should at least hear her out just to keep the peace between our families since we live in a small town. Personally, I do think that her family would feel insulted if I didn't at least talk with her. I know for a fact that she's living with her parents now, so it seems like her life completely SHT the bed. I'd kind of like to get the gory details as maybe a form of schadenfreude, but it's all behind me now, and I think it would all just make me sad. I guess I'm a better man now that I'm more mature, wealthier, and fitter than I was when I was with her, but I'm still the same guy that she didn't have chemistry or connection with back in the day. So I think whatever comes out of her mouth would be bullshit. I think she's probably a dragon cosplaying as a princess and wants me to be her white knight. Fuck that. My mom and sister are pushing hard for me to meet her, and my mom says that she's afraid if I don't at least hear Sarah out, that Sarah's mom will resent her and make her social life more complicated. Let me make it clear that I have no intention of getting back with Sarah. Sarah is very beautiful, but so are the women of Romania, Iceland, and elsewhere. And they have the added bonus of not breaking my heart. I'm interested in going just to hear about what happened to her after she dumped me and to smooth things over for my folks. What do you think, Reddit? Should I go? I kind of want to. Talk me down off the ledge. Wibta if I ghosted my ex-wife. Update. Hi, I'm apparently known as the Hallmark Christmas movie guy. I'm currently writing this from Reykjavik, Iceland. I have some friends I met while doing some consulting work here. This time of year, the days are very short and the northern lights are visible. Unfortunately, it's supposed to be cloudy and rainy for the foreseeable future here, so I'm out of luck with the aurora borealis. We're doing a Christmas pub crawl among other things. Reykjavik is very single-friendly during the holidays. TLDR, I met up with Sarah to shut up our families. We talked. I left. Done. After I posted, for the next couple of days, my mom and sister kept bugging me about it until I caved. I know. I made it clear to them that I had no intention of getting back together with Sarah and that I was pissed that they thought there was a chance I'd get back together with someone who stabbed their son and brother in the heart. Finally, I told Sarah I'd meet her at the playground at our old school. It's a small town, so there's only one school that's K-12. When we met, I told her up front that I'm just there as a favor to our parents and my sister. She acknowledged that and we engaged in a little small talk. She told me that she had started following me on social media. I've since made it friends and family only, and she saw how I'd been all over the world and even commented on the girlfriend I had in Romania. I told Sarah her name was Monica and we had a great time together. She then started in with the juicy stuff I wanted to hear. Unfortunately, it wasn't very juicy. Just regular boring relationship crap. She started living with the guy and it quickly became apparent that, once she was with him, the relationship went from an exciting affair to a regular humdrum relationship. She said she knew the forbidden sparks were gone the first time she had to pick up and launder the guy's skid-marked underwear. Yep, she left me for a guy who was barely toilet trained. She said she was in denial that she couldn't have thrown me away for a guy who was no good, so she doubled down by marrying him. Sarah was always very stubborn. He was apparently a good salesman and earned a lot in commissions, but he was really bad with money. They had a lot of fights about money and household chores, and finally she caught him cheating with a coworker. Oh, the irony. She left him with a wrecked credit score. She was pregnant with his kid at the time, so she got an F0 RT on. Trying to avoid the filters. This is something no one in our families know about. She's been living with her parents and working at the same feed store her dad works at. She said she wanted to reconnect with me due to the fact that we were childhood friends and had been each other's best friends for 17 years, and she missed me. She started on about how much therapy she'd been through and that she is a completely different person now. She wants me to know how much she cares about me and that that girl I was best friends with is still there and blah blah blah. I can't even write this manipulative shit out anymore. I guess I'm not a nice guy anymore. I didn't want to start any kind of beef with her family and mine, so I just told her that I had also changed since she dumped me. I told her that when I touch something and get burned, I don't touch it anymore. I told her it's great that she worked on herself, but some new guy, idiot, will have to benefit from that. When I look at her, all I see is her crying, telling me she's leaving me holding a proverbial knife with my blood all over it. In my mind, she's a person who says, "Honey, I love you, but I also love stabbing." No thank you, ma'am. I told her that if we got together, the resentment would make me treat her like crap all the time, and she didn't want or deserve that. I told her good luck in her future endeavors and I hope she keeps up with her changes, and that I had to leave to go to Iceland for Christmas. Yes, I was bragging. She was tearing up and trying not to let me see her cry, and I pretended not to notice. Dad was disappointed. I caved to Mom and sister. He made it like I failed the test of manhood. I told my mom and sister not to expect any wedding bells or grandchildren/nephews anytime soon. My brother called me a simp, and so I had to wrestle him. He got me in a headlock. The guy's getting too big and I held back too much. I left for Iceland the next day and I'm there until the new year. I'm headed to Budapest for a follow-up project. Sarah is not invited. Stories number 41. Aita for telling my husband I will never trust him again. My husband and I have been together for a long time and met through college friends. I honestly did not know my life would turn out like this. He was a nice guy to me and everyone, so that's why I liked him. In a lot of marriages there are problems. For this entire month he's been acting weird, like not himself. I would try to ask him what the problem was, but he would brush me off. I was starting to lose my patience. Again I asked because communication is important, only when both people are interested in a conversation. He was not interested in communicating with me. I grew worried because was he hiding something? 4 weeks ago he told me he wanted to get a DNA for our kids. I looked at him like a stranger because if he didn't trust me for this long, why marry me? He said some guy found out his kids weren't his, so he didn't trust me when we both planned our kids. I let him do what he wanted to do because my trust in him was leaving my body. I tried to let it go. I keep thinking if this marriage is worth it. 16 years for this? Can't believe it. Now he's accused me of cheating. We don't look through each other's phones, but he randomly said he wants to look through my phone. First, the DNA test that was proven positive, then accused me of cheating. I don't know what to do anymore, but I let him check it and just know nothing was in there. After he gave my phone back, I told him I'm happy he's got what he wanted because he will never get my trust back. I don't have proof, but I have a feeling he's doing something behind my back. If I find out, then it's a divorce. When I check his phone I will update. Edit. I did check his phone but found nothing, but when I checked again there were messages from a younger girl probably in her early 20s, but she and my husband have been texting very much. My name was even brought up in some conversations. I can't explain my emotions because I don't know how to feel about this betrayal. I do see the advice, so thank you. Stories number 42. Why are people who choose not to drink questioned, while those who are recovering addicts and sober are celebrated? I, 29F, have never been a drinker. In college I would have 1 to 2 beers max or sip on a mixed drink just to have something to hold. I was the mom friend who made sure my friends had a good time and got home safe. I have never been drunk to the point of blacking out or vomiting. I just genuinely don't enjoy the way alcohol makes me feel. It triggers my anxiety to not feel in control of myself or even a bit dizzy. Recently I started ordering mocktails or just declining drinks completely. I'm not supposed to drink on a medication I take and I just prefer not to drink. My boyfriend's friend asked me why I wasn't drinking and I said, I'm just not in the mood. He then spent the next few minutes asking me, "Are you in the mood yet? How about now? Are you in the mood yet?" So I ordered a mocktail to get him to shut up. I've dealt with instances like this my whole life. However, an in-law's new girlfriend is a recovering alcoholic and absolutely nobody questions her when she orders a club soda with lime or opts for a sparkling water. They make sure the house is stocked with non-alcoholic drinks for her, but I am continuously offered alcohol even when I have consistently declined. I don't explain why, because the reason shouldn't matter. But it is something that irks me to my core. Additional info: my mom's 21-year-old sister was killed by a drunk driver before I was born. The story of what happened to her and how it impacted my family has always been heavy on my heart, and I didn't grow up around a family who drank much because of this.